Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have a good episode for you, a great episode, hopefully, inshallah. And we're going to discuss some very sensitive matters that are impacting at least Muslims online, increasingly impacting Muslims throughout the globe. And we have to clarify a lot of issues. Because there's always the external enemy and then there's the internal enemy. And what the external enemy always tries to do is to send agents and cause civil war, cause conflict, cause nonstop infighting in order to divide and conquer. This has always been the strategy of the enemy all the way to the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're still facing this kind of tactic today. But how do you deal with that tactic? How can you resolve it and focus on these massive threats affecting the ummah? So today, inshallah, we're going to talk a lot about Sunni-Shia. Is an alliance possible? The main thing that people bring up with this question is the Syrian civil war. The civil war that has been taking place since 2011, when protests broke out due to the Arab Spring against the Syrian government, and that descended into all-out civil war. It's still going on to this day, and there's a lot of confusion about what is this civil war, who's right, who's wrong, what is really the underlying situation. That conversation affects what people think and what they say about current events with Iran assisting and allying with Hamas and the Palestinian resistance against Israel. So if we want to address the war against Israel, we have to also bring in this Syrian situation as well. So we want to get into the details of that, and I've been posting a lot of details, and I want to share it with you all in this live stream, inshallah. We also want to talk about rumors of a nuclear test that Iran has finally got the bomb and is now testing nuclear weapons in the deserts of Iran. This is a rumor. We want to see if there's any substantiation to this rumor, because it'll be huge. It'll be massive. And I think that it'll be good news for the ummah. So we'll talk about the implications of that as well in the second part of the stream, inshallah. But before we continue, I would like to remind you to like the video, put in your comments, and also subscribe to our newsletter. The newsletter is very important, because if YouTube decides that we can't talk about Iranian nuclear weapons tests and deplatforms me, takes out the channel, we need to get in touch with you somehow. The best way to do that is using an email address. So if you put in your email address, that will help us stay in touch with you. It'll keep you also connected to us so that you can watch our content in the future, even if YouTube decides to take those steps. So let's begin. I wanted to begin with a video that was really well done. It came out a few days ago on this topic of Greater Israel. And obviously we know about Greater Israel. We've talked about it many times on this channel. But I thought perhaps maybe it will be useful to see what another person says, a non-Muslim, about this, the historical concept of Greater Israel, the plans for Greater Israel. We went in depth to talk and break down this article that was published in the Jerusalem Post about why Lebanon is actually a part of Israel. They're brazenly saying it now, like, yeah, we are interested in taking over Lebanon and Syria and Jordan. And so they're openly saying it. It's not a conspiracy theory. They quickly deleted that article because it got backlash from probably Zionists who are like, don't spill the beans. Like, why are you, revealing our hand, like our future plans? So we did talk about that article in depth. I read it. So go to the previous episode, I think episode 26, where we discussed it. But today we're going to watch a short video, about 13 minutes long, where someone else talks about the details of Greater Israel and how even the founders of Zionism, who were not necessarily religious, they were secular, believed in the Greater Israel concept because of the Bible. So we'll talk about, or we'll see this channel discuss that, and then discuss the whole divide and conquer strategy that I've been talking about nonstop, especially the past week. The divide and conquer strategy, divide Muslims along sectarian and ethnic lines so that there's constant civil war. So I've said it. You've heard me talk about the Yanon plan. You've heard me talk about like these kinds of madkhalis, like these Muslim, quote unquote, Muslim Zionists who are constantly attacking Shia. They're constantly attacking Iran and saying, yeah, Iran is not doing anything. Iran is actually just working for Israel, like all this kind of moronic claims that they make. That's designed, like that's a Zionist psyop in order to create as much division amongst Muslims as possible to weaken us. So let's go into this video without further ado and see what someone other than me, what other than Daniel has to say. This corroborates, like obviously I don't know I don't know this channel. It's Breakthrough News. You can go and watch their videos and subscribe. The title of this video is Greater Israel Explain the Israeli Plan to Conquer the Arab World. And this has only been published for 3 days now. It was published on October 4th, and it already has almost 500,000 views. So that's pretty significant for a video about a supposed conspiracy theory of Greater Israel. So this was quite popular, and it's popular because it's bringing in important, valuable information about the politics of Israel and how that explains Israel's behavior today. So let's go and see that. Also, if this sound is not good, let me know once I play it so I can adjust the volume. All right, hold on. How's the sound, by the way? No sound. Okay. 1 second. Why does this always happen? It should be... gonna fix this problem once and for all. Nope. Okay. I guess I won't fix it once and for all. But I'll just fix it for now. Okay. Now you should hear it. Let me know if you can't hear it now.
What is Greater Israel? This recently came up after this article in one of the main English-language Israeli newspapers, the Jerusalem Post, went viral. The article was called, "Is Lebanon Part of Israel's Promised Territory?" and it explains the origins of a concept called Greater Israel. The article reads, "In the last generation, the term Greater Israel has come to the forefront. It's sometimes used in political or religious discussions about the ideal or future borders of Israel, often in the context of messianic or Zionist aspirations. Some interpret it as a call for the reestablishment of Israel's biblical borders. However, the concept varies in meaning, ranging from symbolic or spiritual interpretations to literal geographic claims." Greater Israel has been...
And that's the article that we went over in the previous episode.
a topic of discussion, especially after Israel's attacks in Lebanon, which revealed a deeper desire within Israel's extreme right to actually begin Jewish settlement in Lebanon. The so-called Israeli Movement for Settlement in southern Lebanon posted a map of the sites of prospective Jewish settlements with all the Arabic names replaced with Hebrew names. This ideology has had a resurgence lately, largely because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formed his coalition government with Messianic Zionist parties. There's a whole documentary by TRT about this called Holy Redemption: Stealing Palestinian Land, and it's worth watching, but this video will focus on the history of the concept. The article in the Jerusalem Post was taken down, but you can read it by using an internet archive site like archive.org, and the article says, quote, "Greater Israel refers to the concept of the biblical boundaries of the land of Israel as promised to the Jewish people in various parts of the Torah. It's often associated with the land described in the covenant with Abraham, which stretches from the river of Egypt to the Prat River." And then it quotes the Torah, "When Hashem, God, promised Abraham the land of Israel, the verse says, 'On that day, God made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates,' which is Mesopotamia or modern-day Iraq." While it has religious origins, the Greater Israel concept is referenced from the very first days of the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement was the movement of European Jews who wanted Jews in Europe to move to Palestine to create a Jewish state. One of the first mentions of Greater Israel is written in the founder of the Zionist movement, Theodor Herzl's diary in 1898, just 1 year after the first Zionist Congress. On page 711 of his diary, Herzl describes the geographic proposal for a hypothetical Jewish state and says that the area demanded will be from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. He then goes on to describe how this area will be slowly transferred from an Arab majority to a Jewish majority. The Zionist movement first presented this map showing what a future Jewish state would look like at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, the conference where the World War.
So what's significant is that Herzl wasn't like a religious Jew. He wasn't a rabbi, but still he's referring to this Greater Israel concept that originates with the Bible. The borders of it are mentioned in the Bible. So you have these atheistic or secular Jews who just take that, even though they don't believe in God.
World War I surrender terms were being signed. The empires that had won the war, Britain, France, Italy, and Japan, were dividing up the colonies of the losers, the Ottoman and German empires. One of the territories the Ottoman Empire lost was this area here, the Levant. The Levant is the heart of 3,000 years of Arab civilization. For centuries, they lived under the Ottoman Empire, but the empire's collapse during World War I brought hope that Arabs might finally be able to govern themselves. Instead of that, however, the Allied powers took over and created entirely new countries based on completely arbitrary boundaries. The map of the Middle East we know today was literally drawn with pencils and straight edges at a meeting at 10 Downing Street in London, which is the British Prime Minister's office, by two British and French diplomats named Mark Sykes and Francois Picot. Under the all-too-familiar colonial guise of protecting minorities, the European powers drew states that intentionally divided the region along the lines of sect. This is deeply ironic because Arabs are often accused of being sectarian, that religious and ethnic conflict is just part of their culture. But these distinctions between Christians and Muslims, Shia and Sunni, Arab and Kurd, were really exploited and exaggerated by the British and French, not Arabs. They literally tried to bake conflict into these countries, a legacy which still hasn't gone away today. This divide and conquer strategy is the textbook strategy of colonialism and can be observed in just about every single colonial situation in history.
So divide and conquer, this is the point that he's making. It's a part of a broader colonial strategy, not just used by Israel, but Israel is taking advantage of it because of the way that these countries have been divided up for the purpose of keeping the Muslim world weak. The Sykes-Picot Agreement divides up the countries, and this is explicitly for the protection or implicitly for the protection of the Zionist state, as Theodor Herzl has a strategy. He has a strategy for depopulating these areas of Greater Israel. You can depopulate vast territories that are populated by Arabs. You can depopulate and ethnically cleanse that only if the people are weak. The people are weak. They're defenseless. They've already spent all of their energy and all of their resources and their attention fighting each other because of these lines that have been drawn arbitrarily to keep people together that are different ethnicity, different sect of Islam. That's the whole strategy that was baked into the cake from the beginning, from even before the Ottoman Empire fell after World War II.
British strategy in Palestine was to hand over their mandate to the pro-Western, pro-colonial Zionist movement. The Paris Peace Conference of 1919, where the British and French were dividing up the spoils of World War I, is where the Zionist movement first presented its proposal for the borders of a future Jewish state. The map presented by then leading Zionist activist and future first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was drawn by the World Zionist Organization and included the East Bank, which is the eastern side of the Jordan River, part of southern Lebanon, and the Egyptian Sinai. The map was rejected by Britain and France, and what followed was a long debate over what the borders of the future Jewish state should be. One of the leading proponents of expansive settlement was this guy, Zev Jabotinsky, a leader of the hard-right revisionist wing of the Zionist movement. At the 1931 Zionist Congress, Jabotinsky actually split the Zionist movement over the question of Transjordan being included in a future Jewish state because he felt it was such a crucial aspect. This is notable because Jabotinsky is considered the ideological forefather of the Likud party, the party of Benjamin Netanyahu. His most famous writing, The Iron Wall, is an essay he wrote in 1923 that argued that there would never be a voluntary agreement over European settlement in Palestine because, in his own words, there's never been a historical instance of a colonial project getting consent from the native population. He argued the only way a Jewish state could be established is if Jewish settlers create an iron wall which the natives couldn't breach. The essay is only 7 pages long, and it's definitely worth reading.
So this also debunks the claim that's made by Zionist apologists today when they say that, oh, you know, the borders of Israel, that's the borders that we have now. It's just because of Arab aggression. The Arabs were the ones who launched these wars against us. The Arabs were the ones who can't live with Jews in peace and harmony. We wanted just to have like a democratic state with Jews and Arabs living together under one state. But then the Palestinians, they're just so intolerant. They're so anti-Semitic that they wouldn't allow that. They attacked us. And guess what? If you attack us and you get into a war, then don't be sad when you lose that war, when you lose, and we can draw the borders how we want it. This is the typical Hasbara or Zionist propaganda that's spread, but it's completely debunked by historical facts. What this video is showing is the documentation, the evidence that the original Zionists, all the way back to Theodor Herzl, had a concept of Greater Israel, and they were presenting, you know, this expansive map of territory that they wanted to have for Israel that extended east of the Jordan River, so basically a massive part of Jordan that included the Sinai, basically, you know, 1/2 or 40% of Egypt they wanted for the Israeli state. That was their vision. It wasn't like, oh, well, you know, this is just a consequence of Arab aggression, so don't blame us. They constantly want to shift they want to shift or give a kind of excuse for their expansionism by saying that it's the fault of the Arabs. If the Arabs weren't so aggressive, then we would be living under a beautiful, peaceful democracy. It's only those pesky Arabs. Well, this is debunked. This is completely a complete lie. Complete propaganda that even the most basic survey of history will prove.
Israel declares independence in 1948, but in its entire history, Israel's never actually defined its own borders. Israel's borders have changed almost constantly in its 70-year history because it's always conquering or trying to conquer more land. In 1948, Israel expelled Palestinians into neighboring countries to create a Jewish majority state. In 1967, Israel fought the Six-Day War. The popular Israeli narrative of this war is that all of the Arab governments woke up one day and randomly attacked Israel because they hate Jews. But the truth is, Israel provoked a war with the Arab states intentionally. This was openly admitted by several high-level Israeli generals after the war. Matthew Peled, one of the Israeli commanders in the Six-Day War, told the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, the thesis that the danger of genocide was hanging over us in June 1967 and that Israel was fighting for its physical existence is only a bluff, which was born and developed after the war. In the 1967 war, Israel conquers all of historic Palestine, the Egyptian Sinai, and the Syrian Golan Heights, more than doubling its territory.
Yeah, so do you see that? So this is in line with what the Zionists were saying in 1931. 30 years earlier, this is what they wanted. They had literally planned it out. So they're just executing what their prior plans were.
Its territory. The UN does force Israel to return the Sinai, but Israel refuses to leave the Syrian Golan Heights, which is still under Israeli occupation today. One of the major turning points for Israel is its 1982 invasion of Lebanon. It was Israel's first attempt at a major occupation of a country outside of historic Palestine. But even before Israel's invasion, it had been using Christian sects in Lebanon as proxies to fight the Palestinian liberation fighters in the south of the country. Lebanese Christian fascists famously served as the trigger pullers in the Israeli-orchestrated Sabra and Shatila massacres, where 3,000 Palestinian refugees were executed over the course of a day and a half in what the UN General Assembly condemned as an act of genocide. One of the visions for Israel's long-term strategic outlook—
It's interesting that they use Christians to pull the trigger, because that, again, it serves to create a permanent rift between the Muslims, the Muslim Lebanese and the Christian Lebanese. It serves because then the Muslims will say, oh, remember you guys pulled the trigger and massacred us in Sabra and Shatila. We can never forgive that. So we're going to be constant, permanent enemies. Even like in these fine details, the Israeli state is trying to create as much interreligious, sectarian, ethnic conflict as possible.
To come out of this invasion was laid out by an aide to the Israeli Minister of Defense at the time, Ariel Sharon. The strategy paper, called A Strategy for Israel in the 1980s, which was published by the World Zionist Organization's ideological journal, Kivunim, or Directions in Hebrew, explains in thorough detail how Israel should exploit the sectarian divisions in—
This is the Yanon plan. See, the Oded Yanon, a strategy for Israel in the 1980s. So this is what I'm always constantly referring to as the Yanon plan. It originally was in this journal of Kivunim, Directions.
Other Arab countries, as they did in Lebanon, in a larger strategy to fracture the Arab world. It says, quote, "The Muslim Arab world is built like a temporary house of cards, put together by foreigners without the wishes and desires of the inhabitants having been taken into account."
Yeah, so the house of cards was created by Sykes-Picot. You create this very fragmented Muslim world because you've drawn up the boundaries or the borders deliberately to cause civil war within those territories.
It was arbitrarily divided into 19 states, all made of combinations of minorities and ethnic groups which are hostile to one another, so that every Arab Muslim state nowadays faces ethnic social destruction from within, and in some, a civil war is already raging. Then it goes on to say, Syria is fundamentally no different from Lebanon. The real civil war taking place nowadays between the Sunni majority and the Shia Alawite ruling minority testifies to the severity of the domestic trouble. Iraq is, once again, no different in essence from its neighbors, although its majority is Shia and the ruling minority is Sunni. It then lays out its strategy for what it calls the Eastern Front. The dissolution of Syria and Iraq later on into ethnically or religiously unique areas such as in Lebanon is Israel's primary target. In the long run, while the dissolution of the military power of those states serves as the primary short-term target, Syria will fall apart in accordance with its ethnic and religious structure. This state of affairs will be the guarantee for peace and security in the area in the long run, meaning for Israel, and that aim is already within our reach today.
Yeah, so they laid out the plan, and it wasn't like a generic plan like, oh, divide and conquer. No, it was specific. Like they're specifically talking about cities and areas. They're like, okay, this area we want to have for the Sunnis, this area we want to have for the Shia, this area is for the Alawites. So both in Syria and Iraq, these two countries are so critical for them, for Israel to neutralize, and partly because they want to stop any kind of opposition to their plans, and secondly, they eventually want to occupy those countries. They want to occupy it, and they have a direct plan: cause sectarian conflict between the Shia and the Sunnis in Syria and Iraq. That is what we need to do long term. Short term, we defeat them militarily. Long term, we want to foment as much civil war, as much conflict between these two groups as possible. There it is. You saw it in black and white.
If you observe the strategy followed by Benjamin Netanyahu throughout his career, it follows this strategy almost exactly. In 2002, he urged Congress to invade Iraq over the weapons of mass destruction it never had. The U.S. occupation plunged Iraq into a bloody sectarian civil war by manipulating balances between the Shia and Sunni Muslims. In Syria,
do you hear that? Manipulating the balances. That's their approach. That's the approach of Israel and the U.S. They manipulate the balances. So sometimes they will support the Sunni side, sometimes they support the Shia side. Now, some of these Madkhalis, and I don't know, like some of the non-Madkhali Sunni sectarians, I don't know if it's like a intelligence problem or a comprehension problem, but they keep pointing out things like, oh, but Israel supported the Shia side in this war. Israel and the U.S. gave weapons to the Shia side in this conflict. Yeah, no, duh. No one's denying that. We are completely aware of the fact that sometimes it's the Shia that are getting the weapons and the Shia that are getting the support. But the point is that this is a manipulation strategy to balance both sides. You don't want one side to just dominate and win. If one side, if the Shia are getting too strong, you're going to tip the scale in favor of the Sunnis. So you give them weapons, you give them intelligence, you give them training so that the Sunni side comes up and you're evenly matched again. If the Sunni side starts going up and getting more powerful and starts to dominate, then you tip the scales back. You start arming the Shia. You start sending them weapons. You start sending them intelligence and training them. So then it evens out. And you just keep doing this over and over again to prolong civil war as much as possible, because you want these lands of Syria and Iraq to be completely devastated, to be completely basically a barren land. So then you don't have to risk Jewish lives and the lives of your soldiers and the resources of your people to go and conquer. You want that to be as low a bar as possible. So ideally, you want them to just wipe each other out. You want them to wipe it. They won't wipe each other out if one side just wipes out the other side. That's not accomplishing your goal. That's not actually the ideal situation. The ideal situation is not for the Sunnis to win or the Shia to win. The ideal is for them to actually destroy each other, either completely or just about almost completely. So do people get that point? Like, is this so difficult to understand? Because no matter how many times I say this, you have these, dumbos, let's say, these doofuses, these dunderheads. What other euphemisms can we use? That will say, oh, but Iran was funded by Israel. Iran got weapons. The Shia Hezbollah actually got weapons. Yeah, we know. We know that. You're missing the point. Like, you're not actually conversant with the point that has been made, because you're so stuck in this kind of sectarian brain rot that you can't see beyond that. You can't see the larger master plan behind that. And that's a failure. Like, it's a failure of intelligence, but I also think it's a moral failure, because you should not be this easy to manipulate. You should not be this easy to manipulate. Those who are actually manipulated, a lot of these are just agents. Israel floods social media with people who are not really Muslim, but pose as hardcore sectarian Muslims to rile up as much animosity of both sides as possible. So discounting those who are actual agents, you have a bunch of people who are just, again, they're They're suffering from an intelligence failure or a failure of their intelligence and a moral failure, because they don't recognize that they're falling into the grand strategy of those who want to destroy Islam, destroy the Ummah, and take all Muslim lands.
Israel held an official position of neutrality, but later admitted to arming the mostly Sunni rebels while simultaneously carrying out regular attacks against the government, which was controlled by Shia Alawites, in a situation where neutrality actually meant for Israel undermining both sides in a civil war. And
there you go. Let's watch that again for those who didn't catch and didn't understand. So in Syria, like, what was the Israeli plan? Was it to just arm one side so that one side wins?
Of a war by manipulating balances between the Shia and Sunni Muslims. In Syria, Israel held an official position of neutrality, but later admitted to arming the mostly Sunni rebels while simultaneously carrying out regular attacks against the government, which was controlled by Shia Alawites, in a situation where neutrality actually meant for Israel undermining both sides in a civil war. And of course,
there you go. I mean, everyone knows, like, all the serious analysts who aren't emotionally invested in one side recognize this. Like, Israel's strategy has been well documented. You have Israeli officials saying explicitly this, saying, like, we don't want either side to win. We don't want the Sunnis to actually win. We're arming the Sunnis, but we don't want them to win. What does that tell you? It's manipulating the balances. And the people who fall for this plot, like, you don't really have an excuse, because people are saying it clearly and you're attacking those people and calling them names. Like, if you just point out that, hey, Israel is funding this side and sometimes they're funding the other side, and this is a plot, sectarianism is a plot, they'll call you a crypto Shia, you love Khomeini, you're just an Iranian agent. So what excuse, like, do you have for being so dumb?
In Lebanon today, we see Israel collectively punishing the Lebanese people and then telling non-Muslims to blame Muslims for Israeli airstrikes. My question for you is, how long will you tolerate this? Israel has killed over 40...
Yeah, that's a great question. How long will you tolerate this? How long will you continue to be duped? How long will you continue to fall for this trick, this Zionist plot that they've spelled out 40 years ago? If you want to look at the Yinon plan, if you want to go further back, then it's over 100 years. They've spelled out this plan since Sykes-Picot, dividing up the fallen caliphate, the Ottoman caliphate, dividing it up, divide and conquer, create as much sectarian, ethnic conflict as possible so that you can eventually clear out the land and establish greater Israel, as God intended in the Bible, so that our Messiah can come and this third temple will be established and will take over the world. I mean, that's the larger eschatology within Judaism. But, you know, when will you wake up? When will you smell the coffee?
1,000 people in Gaza. And if you include non-combat deaths, that number is conservatively estimated to be around 200,000. Immediately after committing the most well-documented attempt to wipe out an entire city in history, Israel turns around and commits an attack that turns civilian mobile devices into a theater of war, kills around 1,000 people in the span of 2 or 3 days, and then assassinates the very person likely to trigger a regional war. Israel has proven at every single juncture in the last year that it is the greatest threat to world peace right now. I've heard a lot of people describe this as the cause of our time. And while there are very few moments in history where there's a system of government that's so inhumane and so repugnant that the world unites against it, it has happened. And if Israel's actions don't merit that, then what does? The passage of a UN resolution calling for an arms embargo against Israel was a good start, but it actually needs to be enforced. And I'll just say on a parting note that the cartoonish caricature of the Middle East as a region that's just hopelessly condemned to 1,000-year-old ethnic and religious conflicts is one of the greatest lies that's ever been perpetuated in the post-9/11 era. This narrative, which convinced millions of people that turmoil and conflict were intrinsic parts of Arab society, concealed the reality that these were really intrinsic parts of British and French colonial strategy and US world domination.
You can blame, and you should blame, the US, the British, the French, and Israel and the Zionists for pushing this strategy. But there is something to say for Muslims, at least some Muslims, to be blamed for falling for it. That's really a failure of Muslims. It's a failure of religious leadership. Frankly, it's a major failure. And I wouldn't have like such a harsh view if I wasn't constantly fighting against it and trying to convince people who should know better. People who claim actually to be like intellectuals, they claim to be thought leaders, they claim to be ulama, but they don't recognize like this plot, and they are just playing into it and feeding into it. That is a terrible failure on their parts, and so we can't just blame others. Like, we have to take self-accountability. When are we going to change this pattern? That's my question. So
after the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, an American fact-finding mission was created to survey the opinions of the people of the Levant to see what kind of future government they wanted. Taken in 1919, the King Crane Commission surveyed 1,520 villages in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Transjordan. Of the 2.5 million Muslims, 500,000 Christians, 100,000 Jews, and 100,000 Druze that were surveyed, a full 80% of respondents voted for this option here. Greater Syria, which was the concept for a unified pan-Arab state that...
this is sham, basically. This is sham. This is the identity of people who are of this region, and it extends, over 100 years, or even maybe 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years. That's the concept of the Levant, and it's not a surprise that when they're surveyed back in 1919, like that's before the modern borders of these countries were drawn up. That's what they understood as like that's our territory.
That would have combined Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, and Transjordan into one country. Greater Syria obviously
Bilad al-Sham
never came into fruition because it would have been unacceptable to the colonial powers of the time, but it's interesting to think back on given what we know today. The whole thesis of that 1982 Israeli strategy memo was premised on the idea that Pan-Arabism was dead. But if anything, the last year has shown us that Pan-Arabism is still highly relevant, not just to the question of Palestine, but the region as a whole. For the last 30 years,
Israel will never allow it. The US will never allow it. Pan-Arabism, let alone Pan-Islamism. Let's bring in the non-Arabs as well. One Muslim ummah. Why not?
Israel's been normalizing its presence in the region by making peace agreements with Arab states one by one, thereby isolating the issue of Palestine and creating a permanent beachhead for US and Israeli imperialism. But the last year not only shattered this possibility, it showed definitively that the mass of Arab people still consider the Palestinian cause an Arab cause and a cause of their own, and refuse to see it abandoned like their leaders have. It's not
it's actually an Islamic cause, not just an Arab cause. Muslims around the world, and Iran is not an Arab country. They're fighting for Palestinians as well.
Surprising that the 1982 memo was contingent on the absence of Arab unity. Unity has always spelled the downfall of empires, and Israel isn't likely to be an exception.
Okay. So that is Greater Israel and the plan to keep these Arabs divided, keep the Muslims divided, and have constant civil war in line with the Yanon plan. So it's been a week now. I'm getting constantly attacked by these Madkhalis, Sunni sectarians, that they're just dogpiling. They're saying that, Daniel, you don't understand the Syrian civil war, and you're just a partisan of Assad. You're just a crypto Iranian agent. So we'll address all of those, but we have to understand the issue of the Syrian civil war. That's the topic that I want to focus on next. But before I do, I want to look at your super chats. So let's take a look at what some of you guys are saying. No to Sykes-Picot, one Ummah, one body. Exactly, that's great. Agents are spreading Shia Sunni sectarianism. Absolutely. Agents like the Medkhalis. Exactly. Let's see. Super chats. Please invite Kareem Dennis, i.e. Low-Key, to your show. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to him. May Allah bless your work. Thank you for that super chat, brother. Is Greater Israel even possible? Wouldn't that result in forever resistance? They haven't gotten rid of Palestinian resistance till this day. Yeah, but from their perspective, they think that Palestinians are about to be finished. That's their perspective. They thought that Palestinians were finished after the Nakba. 1948. Like, well, we displaced 750,000 and we got away with it. We got away with just expelling them from the lands. So we won. And yeah, there was some resistance, but we're slowly getting rid of them bit by bit. We just need to consolidate more control over global authorities like the UN. And yeah, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Like, that's their perspective. So their strategy worked in Palestine, like it worked in the major cities of Palestine. It's working in Gaza, or so they think, or so it seems to them. That's why now they're going to Lebanon. They're starting with Lebanon. They're trying to do a ground invasion. And Jared Kushner, of all people, and other Zionists are saying, yeah, now is the opportunity to go into Lebanon and start taking over and annexing parts of Lebanon. So they're optimistic. They're optimistic. They see that, well, these other Arab countries, they're bought and paid for. They're not doing anything. You know, these other countries are now fully in our control. We assassinated any kind of Muslim leader or Arab leader that was against us or against our control. We got the U.S. to destroy Iraq, destroy Libya. We have Saudi in our pocket. We have the UAE in our pocket. We have Jordan in our pocket. So, yeah, the strategy is working. We're optimistic. Yeah, there'll be resistance, but so what? You know, that's the cost of being the chosen people. People always hate you. That's literally like their theology. Their theology is that, and we discussed with a rabbi actually on this channel. Like, their theology is that Esau is always going to hate the Ishmaelites. They're always going to hate the chosen people. They have built that into the equation. Like, they understand that it's always going to be resistance, but we have to persevere, and we have to fulfill God's promise. This is a promise from God. It's also a commandment from God to establish Greater Israel. So that's the psychology of it. Politically, what I have seen is that in the last 2 decades, the Democrats favor Iran while the Republicans favor Saudis. I can list out specifics. Yeah, it depends on what you mean by favor, but in terms of forming these kinds of easing the sanctions on Iran, Democrats have favored that. Obama famously made the deal with Iran where they put their pursuit of enriching uranium to the side, and they don't pursue a nuclear weapon in return for money, in return for easing of sanctions. So that was Obama. And then as soon as Trump came into office, he nullified that and returned sanctions on Iran and was very belligerent. And then under Trump came the Abraham Accords. So there is something to say about that, Republican versus Democrat. But the overall, obviously, these parties are both Zionist, and therefore they both are anti-Iran and the aspirations of Muslims. See, not this. Why don't people understand that these were never about Sunni-Shia ever? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay. Muhammad, thank you for your super chat. Muhammad teaches Arabic. Let's see. What if Zionists say Muslims want to spread as well? Well, no. Muslims don't want to spread ethno-supremacy. Muslims want to spread Islam. Muslims want to spread the truth. Muslims want to spread justice. Islam is a universalist religion. Christianity is a universalist religion. Christians want to spread Christianity, worshiping Jesus as God. Like, that's what they want to spread. Liberal secularism is universalist. Liberal secularists want to spread democracy and freedom and equality and gay rights and feminism. That's universalist. But that's not what Greater Israel is about. Greater Israel is about one particular ethnic group on the basis of their biology being superior and dominating people who are not in that group. So if you are not in their particular ethnic group or racial group, then you are to be subjugated and subservient to the superior race. That's what Judaism is. That's the doctrine within Judaism, and that's what Greater Israel is about. This is very different from Islam, very different from Christianity. What it does have similarity to is like white supremacism and white man's burden, white colonialism. There are similarities with that, even though there are some nuances there as well. But yeah, so there's no comparison between what Zionists want to do and what Islam says. Some Sunnis say that uniting with Shia is against Salafi Aqidah. Really? Okay, well, they can prove it. That many Syrians are against unity, therefore it's bad, and that Shia always use taqiyya. Okay, so first of all, prove that allying with Shia is against Salafi Aqidah or any Sunni Aqidah. Prove it. I offer to debate these people. I offer to debate these people, and they never accept. So because they can't prove it. And that's point number one. Syrians are against unity. Well, okay. Why is their perspective correct? Like, establish that if there are Syrians who view this, why is that correct? Syrians just want constant civil war. That's the correct position. They want constant civil war, even if that means that you will draw the entire region into a sectarian conflict that allows the Zionists to take over and dominate Muslims. Like, that's what you're basically supporting. That's what you're basically supporting. Shia always use taqiyya. Like, anyone, like, that's what you could say about any party. Like, any party that you talk to could be lying to you at any time. So why even ally with other Sunnis? Other Sunnis might be lying to you as well. Other Sunni groups. In fact, that's what's argued. Like, you have some of these Salafis who will say that, oh, well, the Madhhabi or the Ash'aris, they are always lying. They don't have any kind of positive intentions towards us. They're misrepresenting themselves. And then you have some Ash'aris or some Madhhabi traditionalists saying, oh, the Salafis are constantly lying. The Salafis are dishonest about their positions. They misrepresent us and our positions. They're calling us mushrikeen, or they're doing this. Like, this never ends. Sectarianism, you can always accuse the other side of lying. You can always accuse the other side of lying. And people might say, oh, but in Sunnism, we don't have the concept of taqiyya. Well, there is a concept within Sunnism that if there's something daruri, if there's something that's life or death, you don't necessarily have to say the truth to preserve your own life. Like, that concept exists in all of Islam. So, but sectarians will always find an excuse. Sectarians will always find an excuse to prevent any kind of cooperation or alliance. They're fine cooperating and allying with non-Muslims, but just not these Muslims of a different sect. Okay. So let's get to we'll get to other super chats later. Let's get to the rest of the program, inshallah. So the Syrian civil war. This is something that's extremely complicated and controversial, and you have to really do research to understand the situation. But after years of research, following the situation, talking to many people, and then more recent events that have come to light, especially when it comes to Israel's plans and what they're doing in the region, I think I have a better sense and a better grasp of the whole situation and what is causing this conflict, specifically between these Sunnis who say that we can never have any kind of alliance with Shia. What is that really based on? So here's a slide that might be... So basically, there are two views here. There are two, if you look at the vast majority of regular lay Muslims who talk about the Syrian civil war, they take one of two positions. Either they take the position of the Syrian government and the supporters of the Syrian government, which is to say that Israel and the U.S. secretly created a rebel movement to topple the great leader Bashar al-Assad. That's that side. A lot of people fall on that side. A lot of Shia partisans, Iranian sectarians, they fall on that side. They think that, well, you had this great leader, Bashar al-Assad, and then the CIA and Israel want to take control. They want to neutralize another anti-Zionist leader. So they created and fomented a sectarian, or rather a civil war, in order to topple the great leader, like they've done in other countries throughout their history. That's one theory. And you have hardcore partisans that this is the only thing that they accept. This is their entire interpretation. Then you have people on the other side who tend to be more Sunni, and they say, no. What's really going on with the Syrian civil war is that Bashar al-Assad and Iran have joined forces to genocide Sunnis and expand Shi'i domination. That's really what's happening. That's how we need to understand the Syrian civil war. And anyone who disagrees with that theory is a secret Shi'i, is a Assadist, is a agent of Iran, is a Khomeini bootlicker, on and on. Right? There's only, the only correct view is our view, that it's Iran and the Syrian government that just wants to wipe out Sunnis and dominate us. So which one is correct? Which view is actually the truth? And the thing is that both sides are so partisan that if you veer or you deviate from these two theories by even an inch, they're going to slam you, they're going to dogpile you, they're going to make all kinds of accusations against you. And what makes it so difficult is that there is truth, there is partial truth to both theories. There's a partial truth, there's like a nugget of truth in both theories. So you have a kind of confirmation bias on steroids, where each side focuses on that nugget of truth that exists with their theory, and they just discredit everything else that disconfirms their theory. So that creates this intractable situation where both sides think that they are absolutely correct. There is no alternative view that's possible. And whoever contradicts that theory is an agent or hates the Muslims or is working for Israel or whatever. This is the intractable situation with the Syrian civil war. And probably in the chat right now, there are people who are raging and have been raging for a long time against me because I'm saying, no, both of these theories are wrong. They have a nugget of truth, but they are both wrong. And I'm going to explain why. And it's not hard to understand why. If you look at the beginning of the rebellion, or let's say protest against the Syrian government, it was just like any of the other protests in the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring wasn't a sectarian revolt, or it wasn't a sectarian protest. That wasn't what the Arab Spring was about. The Arab Spring was about tyrants. It was about Arab tyrants who have dominated their people, humiliated their people for generations. And people are tired of it. People are tired of being humiliated. They're tired of being under the boot. And so they're protesting this. And it happened in Egypt. It happened in Tunisia. And it happened in Syria, etc. That's the Arab Spring. It was not sectarian. But what ended up happening is that the different tyrants reacted differently. So Hosni Mubarak reacted a certain way. And Bashar al-Assad reacted a different way. Bashar al-Assad reacted with a brutal, bloody crackdown. A brutal, bloody crackdown that should be condemned. It should be denounced. And we should call it out. Bashar al-Assad is a kafir, secular tyrant who has murdered, slaughtered countless innocent people, just like his father did. So that's when he had that brutal crackdown and the massacres that he inflicted on protesters and people who are just protesting his brutality. Then that side started taking up arms. They started taking up arms for justice. They took up arms to defend themselves against this kind of massacre, this brutality. And they're justified in that. They're justified in doing that. So if I am an Assadist, if I am a crypto Shia, why would I say that? Number one, think about that. But anyway, they started taking up arms. They started fighting. Now, the thing is that remember the Yinon plan. Remember what Israel wants. This is exactly the kind of situation that Israel can take advantage of. And so they did. They did. How? By going to those rebels and arming them, training them, providing them with intelligence, providing them with weapons, assisting them. And that's true. That is something that actually happened. So those people on the Sunni side who say that, no, the CIA was never involved, Israel was never involved, this is false. They were involved. They were involved because the United States and Israel found a great opportunity to destroy Syria, to embroil Syria in this civil war and basically create a situation where Syria is neutralized and then Israel can come and take over, or Israel can install their own tyrant to be a pro-Zionist tyrant for their own ends, for the Greater Israel Project. So that is a fact. So here, let me pull up the receipts for you. I posted a lot on Twitter. So if you want to go and see these things for yourself, you can feel free. Make sure to follow on Twitter. Twitter is being really slow. I don't know why. Yeah, it's not loading. Anyway, it's not loading. I'll just pull it up separately. So the U.S. has admitted it. Israel has admitted it, that they were arming the Sunni rebels. This is just a fact. This is the BBC reporting. And many other outlets report this as well, that by 2013, the US government and the CIA was arming and training the Sunni Syrian rebels. So then the other side takes this and says, see, the whole time, the whole plot was a CIA Zionist plot against our beautiful leader. That's why I'm saying the nugget of truth. Like, there is a nugget of truth. Like, the US and Israel did arm the Syrian rebel side. That's one important point. Another important point is that the Syrian rebels did commit bad things. They did commit atrocities. That's also true. When we say that, that doesn't mean that the Assad side, the Syrian government side, was an innocent victim. No. In fact, they committed more atrocities. The Syrian army side, Bashar al-Assad's forces, committed even more atrocities. Can we acknowledge, like, okay, both sides are committing atrocities. One side is doing more? I don't have any problem in admitting that, because that's the truth. That's a fact. But the point is that when the US and Israel come in, they see an opportunity to make this a sectarian war. They see the opportunity to make this into a sectarian war between Sunni and Shia. It wasn't Sunni versus Shia originally. And how could it be? Because the majority of the Syrian army is Sunni. The majority of the Syrian army has been Sunni. So it's Sunni versus Sunni in Syria. How can that be a sectarian war? The Arab Spring was not sectarian. It had nothing to do with Sunni versus Shia. How did it become Sunni versus Shia? And that's what you need to reflect on. It's similar to how you had many American soldiers who went to Iraq, or they went to Afghanistan. They were fed this narrative that the war with Iraq and the war with Afghanistan is a war of Christianity versus Islam. It's a religious war. So you had these soldiers, American soldiers, energized by that narrative of, oh, this is a religious war against Islam. We have to go and fight. They hate us for our American Christian values. We have to go and defend our religion and our way of life. That narrative had nothing to do with the fact, like, do you think that George W. Bush and Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, like, they're religious Christians? Or all of these neocons that are pushing the U.S. to invade? No, those neocons are Jewish. The neocons were all Jewish. And obviously you had some secular Christians with them as well, but they have nothing, they don't have any concern for the glory of Christ or the domination of Christianity over the darkness of Islam. Like that's not what they had in mind. But that narrative mobilized soldiers. It mobilized people to go. If you tell people the real motives of the war, then they won't accept that. They're not going to be energized to go and fight. Same thing with creating the Syrian civil war into a sectarian war, giving that narrative so that, one, you can energize people to go and travel from the rest of the Muslim world, go and travel to Syria to fight. That is one objective, or that is one benefit of creating rewriting the war, the civil war, as a sectarian one. The other major benefit is that you isolate Iran, because Iran is the main enemy of Israel, and Iran is Shia. So how can we get the entirety of the Muslim world to reject Iran and thereby isolate Iran? This was a great opportunity. If we can make the Syrian civil war sectarian, then we can make it seem like Iran is a Shia nation that wants to dominate the Sunnis and wants to genocide the Sunnis, starting in Syria and then spreading to the entire region. This is a massive Shia plot. In reality, what Iran is doing is the same thing that Russia is doing. What Iran is doing is the same thing that Russia is doing. Why is Russia involved in Syria? Is Russia also sectarian? Is Russia also a sectarian force? So when we look at, let me pull up a map. How do I expand this map? Okay, so when you have this map of the Middle East, Syria is a very strategic location for Russia. Syria has this strategic geographic significance for Russia. So if this Syrian government is going to be replaced by a government that is aligned with the US and NATO, this is a big problem. This is a big problem for us, because this is one of the major points, like at the intersection of Europe, Asia, and Africa, that we no longer have influence over. So we have to defend the government here, the government that is aligned with us. It's purely geopolitical in nature. And so that's why they support the government. It's not because they have some kind of sectarian desire, or they have some kind of pro-Shia bias or anti-Sunni bias. It's purely geopolitical in nature. I'm not trying to defend Russia, just like I'm not trying to defend the US and Israel. These are actors that are just operating for their own interests, So the other point that I wanted to make about Russia, I lost my train of thought. So this is why Russia got involved. This is why the US got involved. This is why Israel got involved. Oh, the other point, yeah. Russia, in the same way that Russia is now attacking Ukraine. Why did Russia attack Ukraine? Because they don't want NATO and the US to have a foothold right outside their doorstep. That's strategically dangerous for them. In the same way, Syria becomes like a foothold, or just another place that NATO can put its bases or can exercise influence at their close to their territory. So it's purely geopolitical in nature. Then you have Saudi getting involved. Saudi is also arming the rebels. They were at the beginning. Saudi and Qatar were arming the rebels for the same kind of geostrategic interest. They want influence. You have an opportunity to topple Assad, who hasn't been playing the best, with Israel. And that's not good because we want to normalize with Israel. So this is an opportunity. Let's arm the rebels. Eventually, they stopped arming the rebels, and that's when the rebels started to really take huge losses and start losing the civil war. Because Saudi pulled out. Saudi pulled out, Qatar pulled out, and they lost a lot of support. So, but the point is that this was not sectarian in nature. Not originally, not later. It was an outside narrative that imposed this kind of idea that this is Shia versus Sunni. And we can point to so many facts that prove how it can't be a sectarian war between Shia and Sunni, because number one, the majority of the Syrian Bashar al-Assad side is Sunni. They're majority Sunni. And this argument that, but they have no choice, they're forced to. Really? So Bashar can force all of these Sunnis to be in his army, but he can't force the rest of the Sunnis who are rebelling against him to obey and come under his control. How does Bashar have so much control over one group of Sunnis but not another? No one has been able to explain that to me. Clearly, if you're a soldier, you can escape. You're given weapons. You're armed. You can do a lot of damage if you really don't want to be a part of this Bashar army that's committing atrocities. If you really want to get out of it, you could, but they're not. Why? So that explanation, or that fact, is an inconvenient fact against this kind of sectarian narrative. The other point is that Iran is allying with Sunnis all the time. Iran is allying with Hamas. Iran is allying with the Palestinian resistance and arming them. Iran has trade agreements with pretty much all of the majority Sunni states. Major trade agreements, billions of dollars worth in the OIC countries. They have all kinds of trade agreements. So if Iran's goal is just to be the enemy of Sunnis and to try to take them out, then why would Iran be doing that? Now, to claim that, Iran is just self-interested, Iran just doesn't care about Palestinians or anyone, Iran is just trying to serve its own goals, therefore, why should we ally with Iran? Why should Sunnis ally with Iran? This is a moron tier analysis. This is really a moron tier analysis, because it's just assumed, within geopolitics, a nation is not one person, right? A nation like Iran or Saudi or Yemen or Egypt is not one person with a mind and an intention. Nations, countries are a complex network of government, bureaucracy, politicians, population, civilian population, laws, foreign policy. This is a very complex concept of the nation. The nation is not like a person that has can be a munafiq, in the sense that you say one thing but you mean another when you look at overarching policy of a nation. So what we do when it comes to geopolitics, we assume that every nation is self-interested. That's a given. Every nation is self-interested. And this is why we need khilafah. That's exactly why we need khilafah. Because the khalifa and having a caliphate is the only possibility where self-interest of the body politique means self-interest of Muslims or the interest of the ummah. You align the ummah with a political representation, which is the caliph. That's exactly why we need a caliphate. But as far as we're talking about nations, it doesn't matter. We're talking about Saudi, we're talking about Sudan, we're talking about Oman, we're talking about Iran, we're talking about Lebanon. We should just assume that they're always going to operate in their interests. Now, the question that we have to ask, in what ways can we maximize the actions of these countries for the favor of the interests of the Muslims, the interests of the Ummah? We judge by their actions. So when Iran, for example, develops these hypersonic missiles and strikes Israel, strikes their most secure air bases, it's a stupid question to ask, well, what does Iran really intend? What is really their secret goal? You can ask that. You can ask that question, but you have to also look at the overall impact of that action, the overall impact of it, and does that benefit the Ummah? Does that benefit the Palestinians? And the answer is obvious. The answer is an obvious yes. You look at the actions of Iran. You look at the actions of Jordan, for example. Jordan, there are these missiles headed towards Israel, and you have Jordan that's trying to take down those missiles to protect Israel. So can we judge that action? Can we judge it or not? Like, that's the thing. And that's the statement of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, who says, judge by the apparent. We judge by what we see. What is actually being done? So the sectarian nature of the Syrian civil war is a psyop. It's something that has been imposed, as was planned in 1980, in the early 80s with the Yanon plan. Israel has always had this intention, not only with Syria, but also with Iraq. And in the situation with Iraq, it was the Sunnis committing massacres. It was Saddam. Saddam was committing massacres of Shia. Hundreds of thousands of Shia were being displaced and or massacred by Saddam. And this was supported. This was supported and welcomed by the Zionist state. And then eventually Saddam was taken out. Like, that's the way things work when you're trying to create sectarian conflict. So what is my position? What do I believe? Well, I have the position, if you look at it objectively, it's the same as what the Palestinian leadership is calling for. They're calling for cooperation. They're calling for alliance against this bigger threat. And this is the challenge that I've issued against all of these sectarians who want to dogpile me. Maybe they're in the chat right now. You had a video that was just released where Abu Ubaidah made a statement. Abu Ubaidah made a statement, and you can go to my Twitter to see what that statement is exactly. It's in Arabic, but I'm sure people are going to translate it. But it's very interesting what he says in this video. And I say, in this newly released video, Abu Ubaidah praises Iran. He praises Hezbollah. He praises the effectiveness of the Iranian missile attack. And he says basically that it's changed the game. He said basically what I said last week about the Iranian missile strike. It's changed the game. It's changing the face of the Middle East. He also calls Nasrallah a shaheed. He praises Hezbollah. He says he was a great leader. So I don't even go that far. I don't even go into that level of praise that Abu Ubaidah gave to Hezbollah and Iran. The Madkhalis, so I continue, the Madkhalis, meaning the Muslim Zionists, quote unquote Muslim Zionists, obviously hate Abu Ubaidah with the heat of 1,000 suns because he's Palestinian. But what do the Sunni sectarians, i.e. the useful idiots for Israel, think? Is Abu Ubaidah a secret Shi'i? Is he a Assadist? Is he bootlicking Khamenei? Abu Ubaidah actually goes much further than me in praising Hezbollah and Nasrallah in particular. So why aren't any of the Sunni sectarians criticizing him the way they criticize me? Is it because they're cowards? Why are these dogs barking nonstop at me when I say exactly what the heads of the Palestinian resistance are saying about alliance with Iran and the Shia factions? If they do not come out right now and denounce Abu Ubaidah for being a crypto Shi'i Iranian agent like they have been denouncing me, then they will be forever exposed as dishonest, cowardly dogs and nothing more than useful idiots for Israel. So you can go and see this video. And don't you think that's a fair challenge? It's a fair question. Like, all I'm calling for is alliance. All I'm calling for is Muslim states to form a united bloc in order to isolate the Zionist terror state. That's all I'm calling for. And that's all that Abu Ubaidah is calling for. That's exactly what Abu Ubaidah is calling for. And the Palestinian resistance, that's exactly what they say. So if I'm, for saying that I'm a Shi'i, crypto Iranian agent, Assadist, whatever, then so are they. We're saying literally exactly the same thing. Am I saying go and sing Kumbaya at your local masjid and invite like a Shi'i imam to lead the Friday prayers? Is that what I'm saying? Like, is that the alliance that I'm calling for? Am I calling for, everyone to wear like a t-shirt with Khamenei on it? Like, I love Khamenei. I love Iran. Iran is the most amazing, beautiful nation in the world. Like, is that what I'm calling for? No, I'm calling for exactly what is needed, which is a united bloc in order to deter and stop the genocide of Palestinians. It's literally exactly the same thing. And that's why I'm getting attacked for. So these useful idiots for Zionism, they claim that they're not Medkhali, but they sound an awful lot like Medkhalis. I think Medkhaliism is such like a tarnished label. It's such a tarnished term that now people want to disavow Medkhalis. Like, it's become a dirty word. And alhamdulillah, it's because of our efforts to expose these traitors. Medkhalis have become a dirty word, but now they're not calling themselves Medkhali, but they're acting like Medkhalis. Except they do it in a subtle way. But now we expose them, because if they're not going to denounce Abu Ubaidah and the rest of the Palestinian leadership, then they have no moral high ground. They have no consistent basis to criticize me or other MuslimSkeptic team members, or part of the MuslimSkeptic family. So this is the one thing that they will never win in terms of moves. And this is why they will refuse to debate me. And people are asking, oh, are you going to address Jake? I addressed him on Twitter. So I'll share that with you guys on YouTube so that you see it. Let me just bring it up. So all the people who are in the chat are saying address Jake. Okay, well, here's the addressing of him. First of all, the videos that he's put out are full of lies, full of dishonesty. But look at this issue here. I don't know what has gotten into Jake recently. It's sad and disappointing. He has dedicated several videos and dozens of tweets to attacking me, all in quick succession. Apparently, I'm a huge threat to the Ummah that deserves sustained and immediate attention, and he's determined to expose me as such. Oh, well. Oh, well. Not a big loss, actually. Frankly, his arguments are disingenuous, dishonest, and not worthy of a response. For example, his argument in one video that if I retweet an anti-Israel white nationalist too much, who knows what too much is, but if it's too much, according to Jake, that means I'm on my hands and knees begging to ally with them. So this is like the nature of Jake's arguments, sadly. It's just, they're not very good arguments. They're quite weak. Like, oh, you retweeted someone too much. What I retweet all kinds of people. If what they're saying is correct and interesting or notable, noteworthy, I retweet white nationalists, I retweet atheists, I retweet hardcore liberals, I retweet communists, I retweet atheists, I retweet whoever. When did like retweeting someone mean that you agree with whatever they have to say or whatever they stand for? This is like such a insane critique, or such an insane criticism to make. Or his argument that being happy that Iran has struck Israel makes me an quote Iranian madkhali. So yeah, apparently Abu Ubaidah is also a Iranian madkhali. Listen to how much praise he gives for this Iranian strike in the video that was released today. Or look at the other Palestinian leaders, or the Palestinian children themselves that were celebrating. All of these are Iranian madkhalis, according to these clowns. Or his allegation that I do not hold that a person who believes that a created being controls the universe is major kufr, and such a person without legitimate excuse is deemed a kafir. Obviously, I do hold that, as I've clarified several times now. So in a previous stream, I said that there are some who have gone to such extremes in their love for example, the Imams or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they'll make extreme statements like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or their Imams literally control the universe and can do anything that they want in the universe. And so when I'm describing this, I'm saying that there is a double standard. There's a double standard. Why? If you do takfir of the Shia, all Shia, because there are some who have this view, you should be consistent and also takfir Sunnis, because there are some Sunnis, and in fact many, I said the word many or a lot, who also have this view, who also has, does many mean majority of Sunnis? Does that many mean 90%, 80%? No, I didn't say the majority of Sunnis. I didn't say like 90% or most. I said many. Many can mean 100. Many can mean 1,000. Many can mean 1,000,000. If you look at the subcontinent, for example, or you look at some of these Sufi groups, extreme Sufi groups, their numbers are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, who have beliefs like this. And they're considered Sunni. They're considered Sunni. That's a fact. That's a fact. So I was pointing to the lack of consistency. But is that belief kufr? Yes, that's a kufr. And whoever believes that a created being can control the creation independently of Allah, that is complete kufr. And that makes you a kafir. A created being controlling the universe, that makes you a kafir. When was I ever not clear on this? Everyone who watched understood it, but the dishonest people want to twist my words and pretend like, oh, I'm hiding something. Oh, I don't want to offend the extreme Sufis. Oh, Danny, oh, you trapped me, bro. You got me in this trap. You cornered me. Daniel doesn't want to offend the extreme Sufis who have these beliefs, so he won't actually say that it's kufr. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is dishonesty. Like they can't face me straight up. They can't face me straight up, as we'll see. They have to strawman me. They have to be dishonest and distort what I actually say. And here I am clarifying so that they have no excuse. I clarify on Twitter, I clarify on Telegram, and I'm clarifying on YouTube. So I have nothing to hide. I say it as it is. So I agree with many of you that this hostility looks bad and is completely unnecessary and counterproductive, especially at this time, given the genocidal threats against the Ummah. It's sad that Jake does not have the awareness to recognize priorities. So as things stand now, I won't be engaging in constant back and forth with Jake. I have bigger, more significant priorities that are a better use of time. He can make 100 more videos on me and 1,000 more tweets. Knock yourself out, bro. You know, have fun. Go at it. So as things stand now, I won't be engaging in this, but I wanted to extend the courtesy to Jake of responding to his spurious claims, lest it be claimed his arguments are so good that I have no answer or I'm dodging him. I'll gladly address Jake's accusations in an open debate. So far, he has not agreed to this. And this tweet is from a few days ago, and still, Jake has not agreed to debate. So why not? Why not? The other Madkhalis say that, well, debate is not the way of the Salaf. All these other Madkhali dogs, debate is not the way of the Salaf. So they run. They refuse to debate. They want to slander me and put all kinds of lies against me. Like, remember this guy, Sajid? Maybe you guys don't remember him. Like, I don't know what he's even doing, if he's even online anymore. But he refused to debate me as well. He just wanted to make videos about me instead of having a face-to-face conversation. So that, we see the same pattern with Madkhalis. But Jake doesn't have the same excuse because Jake is supposedly a debater. He's a debater, right? So why can't he debate? Why can't he get in a moderated debate, and the things that he disagrees with me on, in terms of alliance with Iran, are the Shia Muslim? Should they be considered Muslim, or should we takfir them and say Shia are not Muslim? Let's debate that. Let's debate it instead of making your videos. If you want to make the videos, go ahead. Knock yourself out. But people are going to question. They're going to wonder, why isn't Jake able to sit in front of Daniel in a live stream and have a moderated debate? Isn't that Jake's whole thing? Isn't that his whole thing? So I'm just bringing this up because I don't want to make 10 videos about Jake and respond to every single lie and dishonest thing that he claims. Because it's tiresome. And again, it's not productive. It's not productive. The debate challenge is there. I'm not afraid to debate. The ball is in his court. If he doesn't agree to a debate, it's very conspicuous. It's very conspicuous that someone who supposedly is all about debate, he won't debate, but he just wants to talk. He just wants to run his mouth. Doesn't add up. Why? Why can't you debate? Are you worried that I'm going to ask you to denounce Abu Ubaidah and the Palestinian leadership? Are you worried about that? Yeah, I think you are. I think you're scared that I'm going to put some questions to you that you can't really answer. I think that's the issue, actually. So, yeah, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense to run away, just like the Madkhalis ran away. You're like a Madkhali in training, basically. So, okay. Anyway. Let's see. He's published more videos. Why? If his goal is to publicly hold me accountable, he can do that in a debate. Yeah, hold me accountable. Expose me, Jake. Expose me to the ummah. Daniel's deviance. It's such a threat that you have to ignore the Zionists. You have to ignore what the Zionists are doing in Lebanon, and you have to attack your Muslim brother. Okay. Hold me accountable because my threat, my deviance is so great that it requires not one video, not 2 videos, but 3 videos, maybe in 4. Maybe he's working on one right now, going to publish it today, or the 5th one, or the 6th one. That's how dangerous my deviance is. But you can't sit and have a face-to-face debate. It's conspicuous. It's strange. It doesn't add up. I always invite the reformists and deviants I criticize to publicly discuss with me, but they never do. That's why video rebuttals are needed, but I'm actually offering a debate to Jake. So why does he ignore talking to me directly and instead prefers to talk about me? Doesn't add up. So until Jake decides to step up to debate, I'm going to ignore his angry rants and continue working on more crucial priorities. I think that's in better service to the Muslims and Deen. May Allah guide Jake, me, and us all to what is best. Yeah, so people say that, Daniel, you're getting a taste of your own medicine. Daniel, you're always criticizing these beloved imams and our shuyukh. You're constantly criticizing them and making videos against them. Now you're getting a taste of your own medicine. Really? Am I getting a taste of my own medicine? The things that I criticize compassionate imams for is like when they say, yeah, we need to change the Sharia law when it comes to family. I attack or criticize imams who say, yeah, Muslims need to support gay marriage. I criticize these compassionate imams when they say things like, yeah, we need to change the concept of qiwama the authority of men in marriage. We need to change that and modify it for our modern times. We need to have a reform of Islamic law. We need actually polygyny, like a man having multiple wives. That's haram. That's what I'm criticizing people for. Like this kind of overt, deliberate, in-your-face changing of the deen, like in a way that no one accepts. There's no valid ikhtilaf on it. There's no valid ikhtilaf on it. Those are the things that I call out imams for, as you can see on the channel. Destroying gender roles in Islam. Right? These are the things that I'm criticizing these imams for. Liberalizing Islam. That's very different than what Jake is doing to other Muslims. Not only me, but others that he's attacking. What I am arguing on the basis of are things that there is no ikhtilaf on, number one. There's no legitimate disagreement, difference of opinion on. Like, should Muslims go and support LGBT? Like, there's no legitimate difference of opinion on this. It's just people who are liberals and reformists have put this out while wearing a kufi or wearing a turban and saying, yeah, this is Islam now. And they pushed that out for how many years? 7 years pretty much before some of them retracted. And they never apologized, by the way. That's a separate conversation. Or feminism, or everything else that we cover on MuslimSkeptic and Haqiqatjou. Like, those are things that, like, liberalism is not about a difference of opinion. Liberalism, like, I want you guys to understand this because you're watching Haqiqatjou. Maybe some of you are longtime fans, but liberalism is not like an okay opinion in Islam. Like, when I say liberalism, what do I really mean? People have this, they think that liberalism means like someone who is like a Muslim who listens to music. A Muslim who listens to music, this is liberalism. We need to go to war on these Muslims that are listening to music. And this is like a huge, these are the liberals. Or the Muslim women that aren't wearing hijab. These are the liberals. We have to go to war with these Muslim women that are not wearing hijab. This is a misunderstanding, actually. This is a misunderstanding of what I mean when I say liberalism and what I have been preaching against for the past 12 years of public dawah. Someone who is listening to music or a Muslim sister who's not wearing hijab, that might be just a personal shortcoming. That might be a personal shortcoming. Maybe they're struggling with it, but they don't believe that it's haram. They don't believe that what they're doing is right or that's halal or that's permissible. They're just struggling. They're going through a struggle. They're not trying to change the deen. They're not trying to change Islam. And yes, it's not good. It's not good, and we should do islah. We should advise. We should take people privately and explain. We should understand their context. We have to do that. Like that, we have to do that to maintain our community. People are going to be at different levels of iman, and you have to have the brotherhood, or if you're a sister, the sisterhood to help your brothers and sisters and lift them up. And you lift them up by advising them, by correcting them, by maybe sometimes you just influence them in the right direction because a more direct approach might be ineffective. And you bring hikmah, you bring wisdom. That is perfect, great, excellent. And we all need to do this. We all need to do this. But that's not liberalism as I define it. That's not the big threat. That's not the big threat that we're facing. The threat that I'm calling out, I've been calling out for over 12 years in public dawah, is liberalism, the ideology that religion has to be reformed. The illiberal aspects of Islam have to be negated, or they have to be changed in order to accommodate Western values. That is a massive project. It is a massive and deadly project that has been taking place since the past 200 years with European colonialism. Colonialism was the deployment of this ideology throughout the Muslim world. And it is a bloody ideology that has been imposed by force to turn Muslims into atheists. And it is extremely dangerous. Why? Because in the past 200 years, this same project has been applied to other religious groups. It has been applied to Christians. It has been applied to Jews. It has been applied to Hindus. It has been applied to Buddhists. It's been applied to animists and Native American religions and Aboriginal religions and African religions, pagan religions. All the world's religions have been attacked by this liberal force. And we see within all of these religions that they slowly secularize. They become more atheist. They become more atheist, not just in the fact that they are less practicing of their religious traditions and their religious rituals and their religious laws. Yes, they are not only less practicing of those laws, they have abandoned their laws. They have abandoned their traditions. They have, deleted them. Their religions have been destroyed. And that's what's happening to Islam as well. It's not that, women are, not as many women are wearing hijab, or more Muslims are listening to music, or more Muslims are engaged in like gender mixing, for example, or any number of other points that you can make. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. But if you look at Muslim history, there are different segments of time and places where Muslims are at different levels of practice. But Islam was preserved. It persevered. It persisted over time, despite there being like, there's a lapse in the religiosity or the piety and the practice of one group of Muslims in one particular geographic location, one particular time. If that was the extent of the problem, yeah, you do islah. You go and you advise. You try to raise the level of iman and piety of yourself and others around you. And the ummah will survive. The ummah will survive in the future, inshallah. But that's not the problem. The problem is that liberalization is destroying the religious values, the religious laws. It's one thing, I keep going to the hijab example because it's very common. It's one thing to say that, okay, I have my own personal struggles and therefore I'm not going to wear hijab. I have my own challenges and I'm on a journey. Some people, yeah, we make fun of that sometimes, but that in itself is not good. It's not good. And but we have to encourage those Muslim sisters to do better. Fine. But put that on one side. On the other side is a person that you might not even call a Muslim at that point, who says, actually, it's my body, my choice. And I want to be equal to men, and it's my choice. I decide if I want to cover my hair or not. I don't care what God says. I don't care what Islam says. I don't care what the Quran says. I don't care what the Prophet ﷺ says. I make my decisions as my body, my choice. Do you see the difference? The second thing is kufr. The second thing is a deletion of Islam and the Sharia and the requirements of God. The first scenario is like a personal failing. It's like a personal challenge, a personal sin. And there's a lot of hope for that person that they will turn around and they'll make tawbah. Do you see the difference? The liberalism of the second example, that's liberalism. That's the dangerous cancer, because it's erasing Islam. When you say my body, my choice, that's erasing Islam. That's going completely contrary to the message of Islam, which says, no, your body belongs to Allah. Your body is an amana given to you by Allah. Allah decides what happens to your body. And when he commands you, you obey. And if you don't obey, then you're sinful and ask for forgiveness and make tawbah. So do you get it? Do you get the difference? So when I criticize the compassionate imams, is because they are justifying that second example. They're justifying the ideology underneath that second example. They're writing articles about abortion, about my body, my choice, and Islam is pro-choice, for example. Or we read the fatwa site. I read you line by line in a 5.5 hour stream. That is very different than a personal failing or a personal inability or lack of desire to follow the Sharia. But the things that some of these sectarians are arguing about, like when they're getting in endless debates on Aqidah, Ash'ari, Salafi, Maturidi, Athari, whatever, when they're arguing on those things, those are not, I'm not saying that they're not important to be discussed, but they're creating a war on those issues, and they're creating animosity and division amongst Muslims on the basis of these things, which, by the way, have been debated for 1,000 years. They have been debated and argued for 1,000 years. If Ash'ariism and the Ash'ari Aqidah was going to destroy the Ummah and lead the entire Ummah astray, it has had over 1,000 years to do so. It has had over 1,000 years to do so. So you debating it now is not more urgent than it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago. If Salafism, in the same in the sense of the Athari Aqidah, whether you want to say that's the Aqidah of Ibn Taymiyyah or the Aqidah of Imam Ahmed or combination thereof, even though there are significant differences, whatever. If following that Aqidah was going to lead the Ummah astray, it would have done that 800 years ago or 500 years ago or 300 years ago. So it's not urgent. Why is it not urgent? Because the majority of the Ummah, the majority of Muslims have no clue like what these debates are about. Like they never come up. Like these kinds of debates on, well, what does this attribute of Allah, what does that really mean? And let's analyze that. The vast majority of Muslims, 99.99999% of the Ummah, the thought never even occurred to them. And if they even studied it, they have studied it in the sense that, okay, this is what we believe. Okay, I accept that, without working it out for themselves, without analyzing it for themselves. Me personally, for example, I had no idea about these debates or these discussions. I read the Quran, I read many hadith before I realized that, oh, this is something that there's a debate about. Then I went and studied. I went and studied for a long time. And I realized that, well, for me, this is very interesting, but it gets to, when you go to a certain depth, then I don't really see a benefit for me personally. And yeah, there's a certain position that I adopt and I find most compelling. But beyond that, it's just above my pay grade. And I don't see this as necessary for being a good Muslim. So that's me doing all this research. But for the vast majority of Muslims, you don't need to know exactly some of these details in order to be a Muslim, because the pillars of Iman are very clear what you need to believe in as a Muslim. The pillars of Iman, the 6 pillars of Iman that makes you a Muslim: believing in Allah, the angels, the books, the messengers, the qadr of Allah, and the last day. The last day. That's what you need to believe in. And the vast majority, they not only don't have the ability or the time, like they literally wouldn't be able to understand like some of these nuances or these distinctions. That's why you have like the Ash'ari position or you have the Athari position for 1,000 years. And look, we still have a ummah. We still had a khilafah. We had these major institutions, these madaris. We had this kind of economic dominance. We had military dominance. We had the golden ages of Islam, quote unquote golden ages, because obviously the golden age was the time of the Salaf. But we had, centuries of Islamic prosperity, Muslim prosperity, without having these questions resolved, without having these debates resolved. Isn't that interesting? But as soon as liberalism comes onto the scene, as soon as secularism comes onto the scene, then it's chaos. Then we have Muslims being genocided. We have Muslims being subjugated. We have Muslim lands being conquered and dominated. Suddenly we have many Muslims who are leaving Islam or who have become completely detached from practicing the Sharia, who no longer even believe in it, applying the Sharia, who no longer even believe in the concept of Islamic governance or a Khalifa, who believe in the provisions of Islamic law. Suddenly, we have this huge amount of deviance that's not affecting like one or two people. It's a cancer that's affecting countless Muslims, the vast majority of Muslims. Do you see the difference in scale? The difference in scale between, the challenge of liberalism, secularism, feminism, atheism versus some of these Aqidah debates. Again, Aqidah debates are great, just as long as they're not serving as a tool of sectarianism, a tool of divide and conquer, a tool of let's pit, let's fight against each other when our families are falling into kufr. Does that make sense? Like, am I wrong? Am I off base with this? And unfortunately, you have like a religious class that have been trained to just exacerbate sectarianism along these lines. And, I can't tell you the amount of times that I go and meet with someone and they say, oh, Daniel, great job. You're doing great work. I like your debates, blah, blah, blah. But, you really need to study Kalam. You really need to you need to study Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, or you need to study, Kalam, or both sides say this, right? Both sides say this. I say, oh, okay. Why is that? First of all, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, you assume that I haven't studied this. So you're being condescending, but okay, I'll put that aside, that you're making such a statement. But okay, yeah, why? Why do I need to study these books from 500 years ago or these debates? Why are they so critical? They're like, well, these debates, this methodology, this is how you can address our situation today. I'm like, oh, really? And then I ask them for an example, and inevitably they can't give me an example about how these debates specifically within this tradition of Aqidah debate, how it's relevant to Zionism, how it's relevant to atheism, or not atheism, but like feminism or liberalism or secularization. Or the question of like, you have people who are denying the Quran because they don't understand how Allah can give permission to the husband to physically discipline his wife. They can't understand that. They can't grasp that. And so they reject the Quran, or they reject hadith because there's a hadith about, the intelligence of men versus women, naqisat al-aql. They can't understand. They reject the sunnah. So what specifically within these aqidah debates addresses that? There's nothing. You can only make it very generic, like, well, this tradition gives you mantiq, like logical reasoning. That's how it's relevant. That's a stretch. You can learn logic, and you can learn that without going into any of these books. They in fact teach them, they teach logic in the university and logical analysis in the secular universities. So, but the point is that because they have studied it, like, this expression, like, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like, if you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. They have studied it. They've dedicated their life to it. Therefore, they think everything can be solved with their specialty, what they have studied and they have poured over for years, and their debates that they've engaged in for years. And that's a blind spot. That's a bias. So the people are going to really hate this. They're going to clip this for sure. But I'm being honest with you, and I want to, if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. Say that I'm wrong. Shouldn't be that hard. Yeah, and yeah, again, those debates, great. Study those books, have those discussions, get into those back and forth arguments, but never think that that's really the main thing that's causing problems for the ummah today. That's an objective question that you can answer objectively. Like, what really is causing the most doubts? What is causing the most Muslims to leave Islam or to become disillusioned with Islam? Like, what ideologies objectively are being pushed by the foreign powers who want to dominate the Muslim world? Which ideologies are being pushed in order to lower the birth rate within the Islamic world? Like, there's an objective answer to those questions, and none of those objective answers include like Athari Aqidah or Ash'ari Aqidah or Maturidi Aqidah. So, and my rule is very simple. Like, you have these are positions that have such a long and robust history of the ummah, in our tradition. So if they were going to lead to mass apostasy or mass deviance, they should have done it by now. It should have already had that negative impact by now. But it hasn't, because these debates are not known or even understood by the average Muslim. Like, the average Muslim doesn't even have the ability to understand some of these debates. Like, the expression that I always use is that, again, I'm not downplaying these debates, but like, I have problems understanding human knowledge. Like, I have difficulty understanding my own knowledge and my own will. How am I going to understand the knowledge and the will of Allah? Like, I have difficulty understanding what it means for me to will and to do, take an action and will something. It's impossible. Like, it's just mind-boggling to think, like, well, what am I actually doing when I reach out my hand or when I'm talking? Like, is it something in my, like, are thoughts forming in my brain or my soul? And then what's the interface between that and the material world? And or like, if you drive a car, you might be driving a car for miles and you don't ever think that, okay, I need to depress my foot this much in order to add this much gas to go this miles per hour. Like, that thought process doesn't occur to me. So I don't even understand my own thoughts. I don't understand my own consciousness and my own will and my own knowledge. And then my mind was blown recently like some years ago, when I found out that there's this question of internal monologue. Have you heard of this? Internal monologue. Like, some people have an internal monologue where they hear themselves in their own heads and they can go back and replay a conversation and, internally think the words and talk, basically. It's like an internal monologue. It's not like a voice that you hear, like someone is talking to you, but you just have that. There's like a voice. Some people, I have that. Some people don't have that. I was shocked. Then how do you, like, write anything? How do you, like, because when I'm writing something or tweeting something or whatever, I think about what the sentence, like, I hear the sentence, quote unquote, hear. Some people don't have that. I was just shocked. I can't even imagine what that means. I can't even imagine it. But yet I want to, like, delve into the depths of what is the knowledge of Allah, the attributes of Allah. Like, for me, it's clear. Like, I read the Quran, it's clear to me what the knowledge of Allah and what Allah's will, like, it's clear. Allah is describing it. And in his book, Allah is one. I understand that. But to go into great analytic detail to understand it at that other level, I can't even understand my own will and my own knowledge, let alone that of Allah, the creator. So those are my very candid thoughts on these issues. And then people say, oh, well, you don't understand the thought or you don't want to delve into these issues. You're just like a Trinitarian. Because Trinitarians say, oh, God is a mystery. And you're saying that God is a mystery too. No, it's not the same. The difference is the Trinity is a contradiction. The idea of the all-powerful God having a son, but the son is actually God himself. So God sacrifices his son, which is also himself, to forgive the world. That's a contradiction. That's contradictory. That doesn't make sense. That's not the same as saying that the transcendent God, creator, all-powerful, every aspect of him and his essence and his attributes are going to be difficult for human beings to understand. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? So anyway, let me go to your super chats. And I think I've enraged enough people for one day. I think I've supplied enough clips for these madkhalis to last them a whole lifetime at this point. MuslimShia. Sayon or Sion? People say I keep mispronouncing it, but brother is the meme master, saying 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Make sure to follow our brother on Twitter. Always has great memes. Chat was wild today. Oh, let's check it out. Daniel doesn't understand his own thought. Daniel said he doesn't understand knowledge, so everything he says is a lie. Anyone that doesn't agree with you is a medkhali, poor view. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. You gotta straw man what I say. I don't think the compassionate imams are medkhalis. See, I have nuance. Did I ever watch Dragon Ball Z? No, I didn't. That's why I don't know. I know, like, if the main character, I don't know what the name of the main character is, but he goes Super Saiyan, right? He goes Super Saiyan, and he just goes to a next level, right? And he becomes a blonde. That's all I know from memes. Just what I've gathered from memes. But I didn't watch when I was a kid. I didn't watch Dragon Ball Z. I'll tell you what I watched as a kid. Do you know Batman the animated series? That's what on Saturday mornings. That's what I was watching, or Spider-Man. Because we didn't have the internet back then. We just had TV, and TV just had 3 or 4 TV stations. We didn't have cable. Like, there was cable growing up, but we didn't have it. We just had 3 stations, and they would have cartoons only at specific times of the day. So if you wanted to watch a cartoon, children's programming, you had to watch it during weekdays from 3 to 4 or 3 to 4:30. That was the time slot, because that's when little kids were getting out of school. If you wanted to watch cartoons, that was your only chance. Or you could watch on Saturday mornings. Otherwise, you couldn't watch any cartoons. So when I was a kid, you had Power Rangers. You had like the original Power Rangers. You had Batman the animated series. Like, these are the things that I know about. But for Dragon Ball Z, there was no anime. Like, even the concept of anime didn't exist for us. Like, I know it existed in Japan, but there wasn't anything where we could access that. So I guess I've aged myself. I'm kind of an old man. Tom and Jerry, yeah. Bugs Bunny. Yeah. DuckTales. Yeah, I remember DuckTales. You had Scrooge McDuck. Stop making us feel old. Yeah, sorry. It's old man. Oh, Goku. That's his name. It's Goku. Goku becomes a blonde when he gets really angry, I guess. Okay, let's look at super chat. Sorry, that was a distraction. I started reminiscing about my childhood. I was in a different world. No medkhalis there, you know, no sectarianism there. No Israel, that's for sure. Had no conception. Oh, here's a good comment from our dear brother. Let's see. Brother Kobe says, another example of funding both sides was the Iran-Contra affair during the war of Iran and Iraq. They aided both sides. Yeah. You know, they funded the Iranian side. They also funded Saddam Hussein. And they gave him chemical weapons that he used against Shia. So, and then when you say that, these idiots will start raging. Oh, but did you know that the U.S. and Israel were funding Iran? Yeah, I just said it. I know. That point does not disprove what I just said, that they're funding both sides. That's the problem. They're funding both sides, and we have to recognize their game so that we stop being victim to it. So, oh, this is a trap. Oh no, they've trapped me with this question. What am I gonna say? Oh no, what am I gonna say to this question? Oh, there's no way to answer this that's safe for me. All I want to do is say things that are safe that will make people love me. What am I gonna do with this question, this trap, this brilliant trap? Oh, yeah. So, Khomeini and some of the Shia imams are zindiq. They are kafir if they say things like the Quran has been modified, like the only complete Quran was sent to Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the Prophet passed away. Or they accuse Aisha radiallahu anha of committing something inappropriate despite the Quran clearing her name. Those individuals who say that, they have left Islam. They're not Muslim. So is Khomeini, was he a Muslim, or did he commit or have these nullifying beliefs? We can look at that in depth, but if that's shown, like some people are citing Sheikh Al-Albani. Sheikh Al-Albani making takfir of Khomeini. And is he making takfir of Khomeini because of what exactly? Is it because of the concept of wilayat al-faqih? Like, if you don't accept that the Sharia should be applied regardless of the ruler or what belief exactly is taking him out of Islam, we can look at that more in depth. But, you know, that's an opinion that Sheikh Al-Albani had about Khomeini in particular. But Khomeini or Sheikh Al-Albani didn't do takfir of all Shia ulama, Shia scholars. He didn't. Now, some people will say that's because Sheikh Al-Albani's understanding of takfir is messed up. And Sheikh Al-Albani should not be trusted on anything related to issues of takfir. Okay, fine, whatever. My only point was that On what basis are we doing takfir? Yeah, some of these Shia scholars, they do fall into kufr and they should be considered non-Muslim, but not all of them. Not all of them. It's a case-by-case basis. I don't know how much more clear I can make it. Like, this is not the big gotcha. Now, is Khomeini a good leader? You can be a good leader without necessarily being a Muslim, right? You understand that, right? And you have leaders who are effective against Zionism. You have leaders who, they may be deviant or they may not even be Muslim, but they are still, they can be still be considered good leaders. And even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam praised Najashi or praised some of these other leaders that were not Muslim. You can still be a good leader. But is Khomeini a good leader? I don't know. Like, was he effective in his revolution and taking over and toppling a secular tyrant? He was effective in that, yeah. Was he effective in resisting Western powers to a certain extent? Yes. Did he have flaws? Did he have deviated views? Yes. Like, this is the problem with you people. Like, there's no nuance at all. You have absolutely no nuance. Like, you can only, you understand the world in the way that, like, a football fan understands the world. Like, oh, which team is good? Which team do I support? Okay, I support Real Madrid, or I don't know, Barcelona, or whoever. That's my team. I'm supporting them. I'm a fan. I'm going to wear their colors and I'm going to fight and for them, and the other teams are bad. Like, that's your approach to all world politics, all world history. And this is not effective. Like, the only kind of allegiance that we have is to Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, that's the ultimate team. And then there are others who live and they operate in the world, and they can be good or bad, or some things that they do are good, other things are bad, and vice versa. And that's what a nuanced perspective requires. So this is not like the big gotcha that you think. Let's see. The Ambient Journal. I don't know what that is, but appreciate the super chat. Okay, I don't want to read this super chat because, or I don't want to show the name because it might be dangerous for this brother, but he says, you should be praised, not attacked, for your authentic truth. I pray that one day the Muslim nations unite and rise as a strong force together. It's late here, sending my greetings from X. I'm not going to read from X because that he's kind of self-doxing himself. So I don't want to read that. It might put his life in danger, but I appreciate the super chat. Yesterday, okay, here, Captain Snake says, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Yesterday, Israel struck a French gas depository in Lebanon. What's your opinion on this? Yeah, so it seems like Israel is striking back against the French for whatever reason. I didn't follow it closely, but maybe Macron didn't give Zionists the $1 trillion that they requested. I don't know, probably something along those lines. So like a petulant child, Israel strikes a French depot, gas repository or whatever. Yeah, that's in line with the way that Israel behaves, like a petulant child. Unfortunately, they own, these politicians, and they are going to have to just take it on the chin, like get spit in your face, and you just have to smile and say, may I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another? They're just spitting on your face, slapping you. It's like abject humiliation. Say, you refuse to debate Zumos. I didn't even see his debate challenge. Like, what was the debate challenge? If he wants to debate, like the main debate, the main contention that I have is, are the Shia, should they be considered Muslim, or should we mass takfir them? And does it make sense for Sunnis and Shia to ally with each other against the Zionist threat? That's the debate challenge that I put to Jake, I put to some other sectarians. If Zumos will accept to have that debate, I'll debate him. But there's also one other condition, because I don't know who Zumas is. Who knows who this guy is? So if I debate him and I spank him, then all of these people who have his same beliefs will disavow him and say, "Oh, he just sucks. Like he's not a good representative of our view." So they'll just nullify the W. They'll nullify the victory because it's a no-name person. It's a nobody. So if Zumas wants me to debate him, get some of these other guys to rubber stamp him, like Jake or this Sunnah discourse people or whoever. Have them rubber stamp Zumas and say Zumas is going to be representing our position. Then I'll debate him. Otherwise, it's just I get challenged to debate literally every day. Every day I'm challenged to debate. I can't accept debates with every no-name person. So tell me why I should care about this person, Zumas, or however you pronounce it. He needs to prove that he has the backing of these individuals or this faction. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. I prepare for these debates. It takes a lot of time. And then sometimes they don't even show up. Like it's a random anonymous person. They don't even show up. Or they do show up. And then after they get obliterated, then they're disavowed. Like that was a situation with heated debates, the Hindu. If you remember that funny debate. Like I agreed to that because there was literally no other Hindu that was accepting the debate. He had like a moderate following of 50K. His videos got a lot of views. So okay, he has some standing in the Hindu community. I debated him, you know what happened. And then Hindus suddenly mass disavow. They say, yeah, heated debates is garbage. Heated debates is not a real Hindu. Heated debates doesn't have the right views on Hinduism. So they just will immediately disavow when your guy gets crushed. So that makes it, that debate wasn't a waste of time because there was no other option. There was no other possible debate. Maybe if we see no other madkhalis agreeing to debate these topics, I'll have to scrape the bottom of the barrel and start debating anonymous accounts. Like maybe that's the only option. But right now it's too early. I don't understand what this means. Critique of resistance is nothing bad, a bad faith psyop, because their support doesn't go beyond saying a few words here and there on social media. Yeah, but who are you referring to? Which resistance? Palestinian resistance? Is a bad faith psyop? I'm not understanding. I met an Iraqi woman in Germany and asked why there's a Shia-Sunni conflict going on after U.S. left. She told me that there was no Shia-Sunni issue. Before the U.S., she has relatives married into Shia. As a common story, there's a lot of Shia-Sunni marriages, and they have children, and this is something that's inflamed by the West. It was inflamed because of Sykes-Picot from 1919, going back after World War I. And we continue to suffer from it. Again, I'm not saying that the Shia are not Ahlul Bid'ah. They are. But that doesn't mean that they're kuffar and that we have to be engaged in constant civil war with them. Brother Daniel, what's the medium long-term plan for the Zionists in Gaza, Lebanon? Is this going to be another 20-year war like the U.S. and Afghanistan? Yeah, their long-term plan is Greater Israel. Their medium-term plan is to draw the U.S. into the conflict so that the U.S. will start to act on Iran, to attack Iran, and ultimately neutralize Iran. Once that happens, then Lebanon will be that much easier to completely annex. That's their plan. Will it be a 20-year plan or a 20-year war? I doubt it. I doubt it because I think that the U.S. is on the verge of collapse. And if the U.S. decides to approach Iran like they did with Iraq and Afghanistan, they will collapse because they just don't have the $8 trillion. Their economy cannot deal with $8 trillion. It's just a matter of weapons. Like their weapons are not going to be effective against the asymmetric war that Iran is able to pursue. And the microcosm of that is the war against the Houthis. The U.S. made big threats against the Houthis. We're going to go and we're going to crush the Houthis. And they haven't been able to do that. Why? Because the Houthis are using asymmetric warfare. The Houthis can use like a $20,000 drone or a $30,000 boat, like explosive, remote-controlled boat, and take out some of these major ships and evade the naval destroyers that the U.S. has dispatched, deployed, or the aircraft carriers that they've dispatched to the Gulf of Aden and right outside of Yemen. So the U.S., if the U.S. uses like a $1 million munition against a $20,000 drone or $20,000 boat, even if you successfully hit those drones, you've still lost. You've still lost because you're losing all of this money. And that's Iran is like 10 times worse than the Houthis. So they're really not prepared. They're really not prepared for any kind of long-term war with Iran. Thank you. Haqiqatjou, we must unite as Muslims. I'm from ex-Soviet Union. Palestine will be free. I'm Sunni, but Shias have been the defenders of Philistine. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Brave Balls, thank you for your super chat. Appreciate it. If you claim to be a Muslim but hate Iran more than Israel, then fear nifaq. I agree. Zionism is close to its end. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, we have to keep making dua. Can we assume Brother Jake is having MS-related mental health issues? Can we assume positively of our brother who has done good work? This is unlike him. Yeah, I mean, we pray that he gets better. He has this debilitating issue, health problem, and we make dua for him. But I generally don't like to accuse. I think it's just not a good way to respond to critics to say, oh, you're having mental problems. I like to treat, I know that you're not doing that, Chocolate Walla. You're not like trying to insult Jake, but, and I, you know, maybe it's a factor, but in general, I like to not disrespect my opponents. That's because I hate it when people do that with me. I hate it when people, well, hate is a strong word. It's more like it amuses me more than anything. But they say, oh, Daniel is the way that he is because he has mental problems, or he was traumatized because of family trauma that happened to him in his life. Therefore, he went insane. He went insane, and he thinks that, you know, global homo and feminism are bad things. It's because of family trauma. Like, it's an asinine point to make. It's an asinine way to disparage your opponent. So that's why I don't want to, like, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt in one way, but I can see how you're saying it's actually the benefit of the doubt to say that, well, maybe this is a health issue. I don't know, but he also has been going after a lot of other Muslims. Like, I'm not the first one. It's not like he suddenly decided to make refutation videos. But I don't know. Allahu A'lam. I do pray that his this MS issue is not painful and debilitating for him. And we make dua that Allah gives him full shifa. Let's see. What happened to the Genius of Islam episode 4? We're still working on it. We're still working on it. We have some of the team members have been traveling, so it has delayed things, but we're still working on it, and I'm hoping they'll come out by end of year, inshallah. Let's see. If you notice, most of the people opposing you are Salafi-leaning personalities who are known to be rigid on matters of ikhtilaf and have poor understanding of fiqh. The only thing they are good for is dividing ummah. I don't think it's just Salafis. I also get slammed by Ash'aris at times as well. On other issues, not necessarily Aqidah, but on other issues. Like I was completely canceled by a large contingent of South African imams because of what? Because of the photography issue. Like the issue of with photographs and video. I was completely canceled. Even some of their, not them, but some people in South Africa were making takfir of me. Like Daniel is not a Muslim because he shows up on camera. So it's not, I don't think it's like particular to Salafis. Like the only connection there is because some of like a lot more Salafis are coming out of these schools controlled by the Saudi government. So because of Saudi politics, that's what is actually coming through and causing denunciation of me not because it's a Salafism, not because it's a Salafi thing, but because there's a conflation or like there's a conjoined variable there of Salafism with Saudi politics because of where those institutions are located geographically and they're controlled by Saudi politics. Brother, how do you see the greater satanic project playing out? Will they succeed or will Iran and the Ummah inevitably defeat them? It's hard to say. Obviously, it's like a roller coaster. We have highs and we have lows. And at this point, it's hard to tell. I'm optimistic. I think that the doors are closing on Israel. Sorry, I have the hiccups. The doors are closing on Israel very fast as the U.S. Becomes weaker economically and militarily. That's going to spell the end of Zionism, inshallah. And we'll see what happens. Okay, I don't get this reference, but maybe you guys will. Even Piccolo is smart enough to side with Son Goku in order to fight the Saiyans, and then only after deal with San Goku. So you guys tell me what that means. I have no clue, but I guess it's relevant to alliances with Shia. Didn't Sheikh Al-Albani refer to Khomeini as a kafir? Yes. I believe so. I'm aware he didn't mass takfir Shia. Yeah, so that's all I said. He didn't mass takfir Shia. I believe he did takfir Khomeini in particular for one specific doctrine, but that is exactly my point. If Sheikh Al-Albani agreed with mass takfiring the Shia scholars, he would have done that. He wouldn't like make a distinction like, oh, this is Khomeini and then there's others. But he does make that distinction. Khomeini opposes the modification of Quran. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I haven't done enough research to know specifically on that point. Let's see. Is Iran-Israel conflict real or a deception, considering prophecies about the Dajjal from Isfahan and historical betrayals? How can we tell if Iran's actions are genuine or part of a hidden agenda? What are the historical betrayals of Iran? What are they like in the modern state of Iran? You know that the government of Iran is only 40 some years old because that's when the Islamic Revolution was in 1979. So if you want to treat, the thing is that people who want to argue about the Shia betrayal, they have this, they shift the goalposts, or they play fast and loose with the distinctions of who actually counts as Shia. Who are the Shia? And they say, well, the Fatimids. The Fatimids were not Twelvers. They were Ismailis. Ismailis are not even considered Muslims by the Shia themselves. So why are you grouping and cataloging the Fatimids with the modern state of Iran? Their beliefs are completely different. Like, they're not even the same in any stretch of the imagination. Or you're comparing a modern day Iran with the Safavids. Again, the Safavids are completely different in their beliefs, in their anti-Sunni ideology. The Safavids were killing Sunni scholars, massacring Sunnis. But in modern day Iran, yeah, they oppress the Sunnis. They have killed Sunnis. But we should understand this as the kind of modern reality of many of these tyrant states. How many Shia did Saddam kill? How much, killing on both sides exists with any of these modern nation states? So is that driven by just this kind of pre-modern, timeless Shia essence that is going to be perpetually and forever out to kill as many Sunnis as possible? Like, this is a myth that's just been created. This is a myth that's been created. When we look at modern day Iran, judged by their actions, and judged by the actions of the enemy. Look at how Israel is constantly trying to start war to obliterate Iran, is constantly trying to do regime change in Iran. That will tell you a lot. That will tell you a lot. Like, did Iran bluff developing or working to develop a nuclear weapon? No, they are developing it. And what is Israel trying to do? It's trying to block it. For the past 20 years, they've tried to block it. Look at the sanctions against Iran. Look at the assassination of Iranian leaders. Give their all in on it. Now, yeah, you do have this hadith about Jews of Isfahan, but they're Jews. If the hadith is referring to Shia, why didn't it make that clear? And why didn't the Prophet ﷺ say that it's the deviant group, okay, a deviated group that is going to side with the Dajjal? No, he said Yahud of Isfahan. So it's not really, that hadith is not really applicable for judging the current Iranian state. I also realized that we didn't talk about the potential of nuclear weapons, nuclear tests happening within Iran. So this is yesterday. Armenian seismic station detects possible explosion in Iran. An Armenian station detected a 4.6 magnitude seismic event in Iran last night. Researchers noted that it lacked a seismic compressional wave, making the event more consistent with an explosion rather than an earthquake. The seismic activity was centered in the Kavir Desert near the town of Aradan, and comparisons between typical earthquake vibrations and nuclear tests suggest this event more closely resembles a nuclear test. Notably, no aftershocks were recorded, which is another clue pointing to an explosion rather than natural seismic activity. So rumors are spreading that Iran has engaged in some nuclear tests, maybe underground, to keep it out of sight from satellites. So then there's a comparison. Let's see. Let me try to interpret these charts. Yeah, so you have different wave patterns depending on if it's a earthquake, a naturally occurring earthquake, and a nuclear blast. So when the Indians, for example, did their test, you see this pattern as opposed to an earthquake, which has aftershocks. Like there's multiple peaks. But with explosion, like a nuclear test or a nuclear blast, is just one peak and then it dies off. So this is a repeating thing, like the Pakistan test. It's like one massive spike and then it just peters out. But with an earthquake, you might have like not only an aftershock, but you have a preceding shock as well. And if you've ever been in an earthquake, you felt this, like you might feel a slight shake. And then after a few seconds or half a minute, then there's like a bigger shake and a bigger, like your house makes a bigger sound. The house shakes even more. It's quite a terrifying thing. So yeah, this is the pattern, like comparing the waveforms of earthquakes versus nuclear tests. Similar magnitude of the Sudan U.S. military underground nuclear test, which recorded 4.7 on the Richter scale. Maybe. Allahu Alam. Yeah, so this is the waveform of the earthquake that happened in Iran. It looks like it's similar to these other nuclear aftershocks. Some people suggested that Iran is playing 4D chess and they just exploded a bunch of conventional weapons, like, I don't know, 2,000 tons of conventional explosives to mimic a nuclear explosion to create these seismic vibrations to make it seem like they are on the brink of developing nuclear weapons. Maybe this is like just a bluff, an elaborate bluff, and then Israel is backing off. That's what Israel did, actually. They backed off. They were supposed to conduct a strike days ago, but they backed off. So maybe it was because they got intelligence that, well, now Iran is nuclear Iran. They got the nukes. Our worst fears have come true. Because if Iran gets nukes, then Greater Israel is no more. There can be no more Greater Israel, inshallah. That's what it means. That's why they've been trying to prevent it for decades now. So that's the nuclear Iran rumors and suspicions. Okay. Love you for the sake of Allah. Love you too, brother. Jazakallah khair. Crazy theory. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but yeah, World War III. Every day it seems like we're getting closer. Hadi says, I'm a Shia and I've never cursed the Sahaba. Sistani says it is condemned. So does Khamenei. So does Nasrallah. And I don't believe the Quran is corrupted. And Sistani also says it's false. Yeah, a lot of Shia. A lot of Shia. I was Shia myself. I was Shia myself until I was about 14 or 15 years old. And I never cursed any Sahabi. I never cursed the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I didn't even know that anyone thought that the Quran was corrupted. Like, I was shocked when I found out later that, oh, there were some Shias that believe this. I was like, I never even heard of it, let alone believed it. Let's see. Daniel, can you address the meeting between Saudi and Iran representatives on October 3rd, announcing an alliance and end of hostilities between them? Yeah, I hope that's the case. But as long as they have this possibility of normalizing with Israel, it's still going to be a dangerous situation. I hope that they can really cement an alliance and end hostilities. And I want to see what the Madkhalis think about that, because they claim that it's impossible. It's better to ally with Israel than with Shia. So then are you going to criticize your rulers for wanting to ally with Iran, Shia Iran? If Iran goes nuclear, will you go back to Shia? At least you have more support and more powerful. No, I'm not going to go back to Shia. Again, Shia, like, the problem with Shia is that, as I explained many times, is that they have this deviated belief in imams. Let's see. Okay, couple of more. I mentioned your name to a Sunni sheikh and he started abusing you. Just constantly getting abused. I'm like the whipping boy. I'm just like a piñata. They're just constantly beating me. Said you're supporting the Shia. I believe the problem is Islamic fundamental psychopath still active. Yeah, I'm just constantly being beaten. Like, oh, Daniel is supporting the Shia. Daniel is so mean to our sisters. Daniel has refuted all of our eminent ulama, meaning the compassionate imams. Daniel is this. Daniel is that. This is, yeah. Someone was telling you, like, Daniel, this Syria issue, it's just very sensitive. Syria issue is really sensitive, and you're going to lose a lot of followers. Like, a lot of your loyalists, you're going to lose them. And, the brother that was telling me this, it was, just him being nice and him wanting to help me and advise me in a very brotherly way. So I appreciated him reaching out for sure. But I told him, like, I don't care if I lose all my followers. No offense to you guys watching the stream and following Haqiqatjou, but I honestly don't care. I honestly don't care if I lose all my followers and you don't like what I have to say about one particular issue. I don't care. Like, I was telling him, like, actually, there's a silver lining. If I lose all my followers, I can go on vacation. I haven't had a vacation in years. I can go put my feet up, relax. I don't have to worry about online drama. I don't have to worry about constantly being abused and attacked. I mean, I don't really care, but so if I lost all my followers, it wouldn't actually be a big loss. Like, oh well, Qaddar Allah, that's what Allah wanted. If I did anything good or said anything correct, then inshallah that will be accepted. I just make dua to Allah that he accepts that. But now that's it. That's the end of it. I lost all my followers because I said that actually Shia and Sunni do need to ally in order to defeat Zionism, and it doesn't matter what has happened in the past. Oh, okay, Daniel is canceled and he loses all his followers. Oh well. Like, I don't honestly care. And the thing about followers, like, if you're following someone, then you should trust them. And if you don't understand something that they say, you should give them the benefit of the doubt. The kind of relationship between someone who is teaching on social media and preaching on social media about Islam, about Islamic thought, it's a teacher-student relationship. I'm your teacher. I am speaking and I am doing research and I'm holding a lesson for you and I'm sharing knowledge with you. Now, if you don't like what I have to say, then don't be my student. No problem. Unfollow, go find a better teacher that makes more sense to you. No harm, no foul. But nonetheless, that is my role as a teacher. And by following me, you trust my understanding of certain things. You trust not everything, but you trust my understanding of certain things. And you find it valuable enough to listen, to tune in, to take that information, to follow the debates or whatever. because you find value in that. So, but that's ultimately the relationship. So I am not, this is the promise that I'm making to you. I am not going to censor myself on an issue that is critical for the ummah. I'm not going to censor myself on the basis of the majority of you or the minority of you being disillusioned or becoming angry if I address that issue. Does that make sense? I am not like on any given issue. And that's been my track record. When I came out against feminism back in 2013 and 2014, there was a huge, much bigger than this Syria stuff, much bigger than this Shia Sunni stuff, by the way. There's a huge backlash, and I was canceled. I've been canceled many times. This was back in 2014. I was canceled because of my views on feminism. Then I was canceled on my view on LGBT and what I was saying against these compassionate imams and the Dawah mafia. I was canceled. Okay, you're never going to speak at any of these masajid again. You cannot publish your articles. You cannot work for us, etc. I was canceled. I was blackballed. Right? On the issue of COVID, another issue, the backlash on that, huge backlash. Daniel is X, Daniel is Y, was completely canceled. Okay? If I was trying to, if I was trying to just ride the tide of popular opinion, I would just keep my mouth shut. I'd keep my mouth shut. I'd make sure to only talk about those issues that I'm sure the majority of my audience is going to find appealing and is going to agree with me 100%. And that's why a lot of these celebrities, that's the only thing that they talk about. They talk about things that no one can disagree with. They say things that no one is going to actually object to. Things like, yeah, you should be merciful. You should be kind to everyone. You should be accepting and compassionate. And they add some jokes in and they tell you like a funny story or they tell you an inspiring story and they pump you up and they say, yeah, you're amazing. You can do it. And this is like, they've taken this from Christians basically. And it's only the good news. It's the good news gospel. And that's their dawah. And they justify it to themselves. They say, oh, we need to bring people closer to Islam, not drive them away by being negative. They appeal to the lowest common denominator. And this is why they have millions and millions of followers. That's why. But, putting aside whether what they're doing is right or wrong, it's clearly wrong because they're hiding many aspects of Islam. But for me personally, it's also boring. It's also boring and asinine and, okay, how many lectures can I listen to about being kind and you're amazing and, be good to women all the time? Like how many lectures like that can I listen to? Even if I didn't know that it's the wrong, it's a distortion of Islam. So, but that's my guarantee to you. Inshallah, whatever I believe is correct, whatever I believe is right, based on my due diligence, based on my research, based on what I learned from my teachers, and my commitment to the Islamic tradition and the Quran and Sunnah, that is what I will express. I'm an open book. That is what I will express. That is what I'm going to teach. And I'm not going to self-censor myself on the basis of, oh, this is unpopular. Now, will I address every issue? No. Some issues are not necessary to talk about. Like, they're not really critical. How about the debate on where to hold your hands in prayer? Have I talked about that? Have I told you like my opinion, what I think, what I do, or what? Have I said anything about that? So does that mean I'm hiding anything from my audience? No, I just don't think that that is a critical issue that is going to have massive ramifications for the ummah. So, but if there is something that has massive ramifications for the ummah, and I believe it, I'm not going to censor myself because I'm worried about backlash. That's my guarantee to you. And Allah make it true. Allah protect me and you and guide us all. I hope that that is clear, crystal clear to you. With me, inshallah, what you see is what you get. Yeah, so here's someone says, oh, but you gave an opinion on the education of women. Yeah, I gave an opinion because that is a huge, devastating issue that the ummah is suffering from. That's why. That's why. It's a huge problem that is destroying marriages. It's destroying Muslim marriage. It's destroying family. It's destroying the birth rate of the ummah. This is a huge issue. That's why I addressed it. That's why I took the heat. And said, you know, something that I haven't really seen anyone else say. I haven't seen, even though people privately think it, even though they'll privately say it, they don't comment on it. And there's only one government in the world that will stand by that position. But in terms of other du'at, in terms of other speakers, I don't know anyone who has given like this much attention or this much debate on that issue. And again, people told me that, Daniel, by talking about this issue of women's education, why? It's not necessary. Don't talk about it. Even if you have this belief, you're going to lose all your followers. And I said, I don't care. I don't care about my followers being lost. If they don't agree, they don't agree. But I have confidence that many of them are smart enough to think, maybe there's something here to be learned. Maybe there's something here that I don't know. Maybe I've been brainwashed on this issue. Maybe there's another view that I should consider. And I can listen to someone and consider their perspective without an emotional reaction. Alhamdulillah, that's you guys. That's my audience. And that's why I appreciate you. And I have a good opinion of you. Husnul dhan of all of you guys. Bro, you should just do a stream with heart softeners. It'll be hilarious, to be honest. Yeah. I should do that. I think all of my streams are heart softeners. What? You're telling me that I haven't been doing heart softeners this whole time? I thought every stream that I do is a heart softener. You guys think I'm harsh? Yeah. What's this? You do have value, Daniel. Brothers criticize with no alternative, just division. I'm cool with all that. Give me something beneficial. Yeah, inshallah, I try to do that. Chocolate Walla's simping. Don't be a simp, Chocolate Walla. No, I'm joking. Chocolate Walla's the OG. Haqiqatjou watcher. Let's see. Cash Money Millionaire says, I'll admit this is a complex matter, at least for the general masses. However, if you are right, then it might take a couple of years for people to come around if history is an indication. Yeah, that's generally the way it goes. A lot of people, I always get messages from people saying, Daniel, I hated you. Your face disgusted me. And every time I hear your voice, it's like nails on a chalkboard. But now I think what you said was right. So It happens. Let's see. If I get drafted, I ain't going. Good man. The U.S. draft. What part of Shia belief about imams is deviant? Well, the idea of deviance, like having these 12 imams and they're the only ones who correctly interpret the religion. That is not found in the Quran. That belief is not found in the Quran, and you don't really see any authentic statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaching it. And if there were, why didn't any of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have that teaching or convey that teaching or abide by that teaching? You have to basically believe in this massive conspiracy that 80% or 90% or more of the Sahaba or the Salaf, they knew about this teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they hid it and they lied against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you have that belief, you've destroyed Islamic epistemology, because if all of the Salaf were willing to conspire to hide this belief, like this teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that destroys their credibility. They could be lying about everything else. They could be lying about every other belief or teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's like this logical problem in Shiism, and it's not in the Quran. You don't find any authentic narration, and if you follow it to its logical conclusion, the idea of like the imams being the only correct, authentic conveyors of Islam, logically that means that the majority of the people around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam hid that belief that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught, and therefore if they did that destroys the whole concept of tradition. So these are among the reasons that belief is deviance, because it's an addition to the religion. You're adding something. The Sunni understanding is that the religion is preserved through conveyance. Like it's conveyed through an isnad. It's conveyed and taught not just by a select group, not just by Ahlul Bayt. It's taught because the Ahlul Bayt is a very small minority of the students of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have this massive ummah of Sahaba and Salaf, and they were being taught and they learn and they convey. And that is what is, and what protects the teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the concept of tawatur or ijma, or this idea that when large groups of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, agree on something, then logically that is an indication that that is indeed what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught. It's authentic. That's the Sunni epistemology. It's a consistent epistemology. It makes sense. This Imami epistemology is self-contradictory because it relies on this massive conspiracy. It relies on, for example, Ali radiallahu anhu hiding his true beliefs, because Ali radiallahu anhu followed Abu Bakr and he followed Omar and Uthman. So why would he, and he, gave allegiance to them and he named his children after them. And so was Ali just lying? And that's how you get this doctrine of taqiyya, because they say that, well, he was hiding his true beliefs. He was hiding his true beliefs and he was just going along with it because he couldn't say otherwise. That's a massive conspiracy. It just doesn't add up. It does not add up. And that's the conclusion that I came to when I was a teenager. Let's see. A good question. Why don't the Madkhali Lions of Tawheed back the 98% Sunni population of Palestine? Well, these Lions of Tawheed said the Palestinians are mushrik grave worshippers. Ikhwani deviants who ally with the Shia, therefore they deserve what Israel does to them. That's literally what the Madkhali said. That's literally what Shamsi said. And his followers and Abu Khadija and all these people, they went to war saying, you know, slamming the Palestinians, specifically for allying with Iran and also not having the correct aqidah according to them. So imagine, like, you are attacking your brothers and sisters who are being genocided, and now is the time for you to start criticizing and making jokes and saying boycotts are ineffective. Let me drink my Starbucks Frappuccino, like Rabbi Ferris and Shamsi and all of these deviants. Those are the Madkhalis. And now, like, they want to renegotiate this question of Iran and say, oh, if you want to ally with Iran, that means that you are a deviant yourself. You're a crypto Iranian Shia agent. The same kind of critique they gave against the Palestinians, they're giving against me. They also probably think that I'm a mushrik deviant. Okie dokie. I think that's most of the super chats, and we're past 3 hours now, so I think that's enough. And we're gonna have another stream this week, inshallah. I'm not sure the topic. Probably, I'm hoping it's gonna be the Are Shia Kuffar? Like, can we do mass takfir of the Shia? We want to look at what the scholars of Ahlus Sunnah have said historically, both past and present. So we are going to bring a lot of research, a lot of information. That's going to be a long stream, but we're going to get into that and provide you value on this question because there's a lot of confusion on it. So what does the Sunni tradition, what does Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah historically say about Shia? Are they all kafir? Are they all deviants? Or is there a mix? Do we take it on a case-by-case basis? And can we rely or can we ally with the Shia? That will also be mentioned, but you know the answer to that already. You already know that in Islam it's permissible to ally even with non-Muslims. There are some conditions for that. But in general, the principle is that you can ally with non-Muslims and agree to cooperate. Okie dokie. Really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate all your super chats. Stay tuned for the announcement about the next stream. The way to do that is subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we have a live stream. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link to the newsletter is down below in the description. Just click the link, put in your name and email. It takes you 2 seconds. It really helps us stay in touch with you as needed. And yeah, so appreciate you guys. Jazakallah khairah. We will see you inshallah on the next stream. With that, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.